Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scot, and joining me tonight, well, first, it's the little Missouri thorn in my side. It's Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, how's it going? Long time, no here.
Has it been? You know what? I actually don't remember the last time we recorded together.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. I'm so sad. Or maybe I'm so happy. I don't know. Speaking about being either happy or sad, the guy who always brings it here, the other needling nudnik from Kentucky way, it's Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
You know. It's
You're Scott.
Yeah, you know what? it just occurred to me. I was about to say it's 2022, but it actually makes me want to say, no, it's 2020. You know? You see what I did? Anyway.
I do.
And then, yes, ladies and gentlemen, and other non-binary folks, we are being joined by both Jamie and Brian, and later on, we supposedly will be joined by Dan. Yeah, he'll be. It's my favorite toy ever. Anyway, I'm such a fucking child. Anyway, obviously, we have assembled to mostly talk about the best of 2021. And I don't mean that Spider-Man movie, although I think we could probably do a better podcast just talking about that. Have you guys seen that movie, by the way? Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
I have not. Our theater has been closed down, so I didn't get a chance to drive an hour out of town to do so.
It might actually be worth the hour drive. I'll leave it at that. I've seen it twice, man, in a theater. But no, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're all going to be presenting our own top 20s of 2021. Unless this all falls apart, much like the last couple of years. So I think the plan will be the three of us are going to go through our lists 20 through 11. Then we're going to pause for a little while to talk about some other things, depressing disappointments, pleasant surprises. And then after that, we will get into our top 10s, and hopefully the plan is that Dan will be joining us at that point. So then you'll be hearing a quartet of top 10s. I don't know if his is just going to be featuring episodes of Frasier and Battlestar Galactica. We'll see. But, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. But, and wow. I almost forget when last time you were here. I'm trying to remember last time all four of us were doing a podcast together.
I am pretty certain it would have been this time of year last year.
300. I bet it was 300.
I bet you're right.
Yeah, it had to be, because we were definitely all on that one. That's on, and if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly here, I think we all were together for 300. But when we did Best of 2020, Dan was not here because I think he only watched maybe like 3 shows in 2020 or something like that. I think it was like Better Call Saul and something else. Anyway. Alrighty then. So before we get rolling, as I always seem to ruin our podcast this way, I'm going to go into a little needless preamble here, just to let you all know about the supposed rules, or really the lack thereof, for our lists, and maybe some other crap I shouldn't really bother mentioning. Now, anyone who's been a long-time listener, you might remember, we tend to either do our lists that are only about dramas, or we do separate lists for comedies and dramas. I decided to change that this year, finally. Put them all in one list and be done with it. Not because that's how everybody else does it. I actually like the fact we do that differently over the years. I just felt, you know what? It's getting harder and harder to easily classify way too many TV series out there. The whole dramedy thing that, that's been going on actually goes back to MASH, I guess. But, I was thinking about years ago when I would put like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend on my list, even though that's really not classified as a drama anywhere, even if it did have a few dramatic moments here and there. But now there are shows I'm just like, I don't know. Is that a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it a dramedy? Is it a comma? I don't know what to call it. So just lump everything together. In the course of doing that, because I know this has came up between us when we were talking about what we could or couldn't put on the list. There has been a question, can you include things like a nonfiction series or maybe something that feels more like a movie or, well, actually is a movie? The way I see it, look, if it was ultimately done and produced and presented on the small screen and with that as its main intention, then it qualifies. It's like when I included El Camino years ago, which was, a movie, or it really felt like two Breaking Bad episodes mashed together with a movie. It was shown in theaters. I think Dan actually saw it in a movie theater, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yep.
I included. It was a Netflix offering. Come on. So if people wanted to include anything from Netflix's The Harder Way or Don't Look Up or things of that nature, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I've actually heard people out there from other podcasts, debating about whether they should include something like, The Beatles Get Back. And because that was originally intended to be a movie. And I was going, that's a stupid way to look at it because they changed their thinking on that a long time ago. That's why they changed the way they edited it and became 7 hours because they weren't going to put a 7-hour movie in the theater. So, it's made at this point, it's made for TV. It's not the new Matrix movie. You can include something like that. The only rule I have, and if I hear either of you two break it, I'm going to scold you. It has to be something that actually aired in the calendar year of 2021. Look, if it started in 2020 and ends in 2021, it's fine. If it started in late 2021 and it's still on right now and you wanted to put it on your list, that's fine too. I don't care. But if the entire show or series or whatever it was aired before 2021 and you included it, no, you shouldn't have done that. That's going to be the only caveat I have. I couldn't include The Flight Attendant. I watched it in 2021, but that aired in late 2020. Can't include it. Just because it's not from the year. Can't whatever. So that would be my only rule. That's the only, because I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I agree to your terms.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought about it. I thought about including, because I know there's some people who are putting like Station 11 in their top 10 lists and whatever. And I have watched an episode of it, and I'm thinking, do I really want to watch this right now? But I'm like, but the show hasn't ended yet. It's actually ending by the time we're probably going to release this podcast. It's like, what if it has a horrible final episode? How can I in good conscience have included it on my list? And then, because that can happen. Remember the first season of the OA or the OO, however you're supposed to pronounce that?
Yeah, and then it turned into some weird I don't know, flash mob thing at the end.
It was performance dance.
Yeah.
I love
this is a really bad time for a flash mob.
Yeah,
guys.
I love the first 9 episodes, and that last episode is like, the logic issues I had with it alone were just pissing me off. Whatever. I ranted about that years ago. I don't need to rant about it again. But that's an example of, well, that's why the show wouldn't be on my list, because that was a really bad last episode. Anyway, okay, you know what? I have said enough. So let's get into our lists now. And since I think we've heard enough from me, we're going to kick it off with the two of you. So, Jamie, why don't you start things off with number 20 on your list of the best of 2021?
All right. Okay. Number 20, I have ABC's new reboot, if you want to call it that, of The Wonder Years. So it's pretty much set up exactly like The Wonder Years that most of us know and love. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. However, this time the story takes place again in the 1960s, but in Montgomery, Alabama, and it follows a young man named Dean Williams. And I wanted to include something that, I don't know, something they could sit down and watch with a kid. And I've got a kid that's the same age, and so we make sure to watch it every week, and they've done a really great job. It is different. than the first series in its own way for multiple reasons, but it still kind of has that same, that same feeling, and it's very funny and it's very moving and brings a lot of like political and current day issues back around full fold. So they still keep that format there. But I think that anybody who enjoyed the original series would probably really enjoy this one. And if you don't, oh well, but it is really pretty good.
Brian?
With my number 20, I'm going to go back a long time, and some of you have probably already watched season 4, but I'm going to go with Cobra Kai season 3. And just for silly, fun, good time, this show is eminently bingeable. It's really great because you, at some point, if you're like me, you turn on the LaRussos and you actually root for Johnny Lawrence even more as the show goes on. But I thought season 3 was really great. And we get in season 3 a brief appearance by Elizabeth Shue. So I enjoyed it. It was fun, entertaining, nostalgic, with great cheesy hard rock songs of my youth. The choreography got a little bit better, so I really enjoyed Cobra Kai season 3.
I'm totally looking it up for a second to see if I can yell at you or not. Anyway.
Yeah, they've dished season 1, 2, and 3. Like, they put them really close together. I was surprised 4 came out as fast as it did.
When did season 3 get released? I can't remember. Was it January? Was that when it got released?
Yeah,
it was
like
right
about
into
a year
the
ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to say they've released every season in the same month each year.
It was released January 1st, 2021.
That's
you go.
Crazy. So they literally released season 3 on January 1st and season 4 on December 31st. That's crazy. But it works. There you go. Nice. Nice choices for both of you. For me, you know what? I do want to mention something before, because I'm Scott. There's a couple shows that aren't going to appear on my list. I already mentioned why I'm leaving Station 11 off. Just because I can hear, I'm gonna get rid of suspense for like maybe a couple shows. I haven't seen Yellow Jackets yet. I mean, I've only seen one episode of it. I'm watching it Sundays with my friends. I'm sure it's a great series. Other people are watching it. It also hasn't finished yet. It's not going to be on my list, and there's a couple shows that I know are excellent. I know there's one that Jamie has told me to watch repeatedly, and I'm sure it's going to be very high on her list. They are falling into the category it feels like homework to me, so I just haven't watched them as of yet. I just haven't been able to get myself to watch them. You know the one I'm talking about, Jamie, because I'm sure you'll talk about it later.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong. I was wrong about Chernobyl. I held off on that for a while, and I freaking love that one, but
It's so good.
I just haven't been in the proper headspace. One I know you're going to talk about. Another one is like a show called Made, which I'm sure is very good. Maybe I don't know if either of you have watched it. You might have it on your list. I just been like, I can't bring myself to watch it yet. All right, my number 20 is season 5 of The Good Fight. This show, once they got out from under the shadow of most of all that Trump nonsense, which I know was kind of fun, but also I felt was kind of excessive after a while. I felt, the last couple of years, the series has really turned in a couple of really strong seasons. This one, it might have petered out a little bit with the last few episodes. And, I know I'm in the minority of viewers. I think just a little bit of Sarah Steele's Marissa can go a really long way. But this season, to have recurring actors like Mandy Patinkin, Wayne Brady, and now I've become such a fan of Let's Make a Deal with Wayne Brady. I really like Wayne Brady all of a sudden. And they brought back Wallace Shawn, who everyone loved from the Good Wife, which is pretty awesome. And your main actors, Baranski, McDonald, they just make the show a lot of fun. I still don't buy people saying it's better than The Good Wife. I'm like, whoa. Slow your roll there, guys. but it's still a very good show. So number 20 is The Good Fight season 5. So we'll swing back around to Jamie for number 19.
All right. Okay, number 19. I didn't include this in any of the lists that I had done before, but I thought it was time for its due respect, and I had the final season 11 of Shameless. So this show has had some seasons that have been really great, and it's had some seasons that are not so good. The show wrapped up really nicely, and even though some of the storylines sometimes would hit a little too close to home, it's one thing they've always been good at is carrying their characters right from season 1 all the way through to very logical places. And season 11 is no exception. It was really funny, and if you got into the show at all and didn't watch the final season, I would suggest you go and do it. Be at peace with the characters. It was good stuff.
Go in peace.
Go in peace. Go in peace.
That is one
Gallagher
of those
family.
That is one of those series that I've been told over the years a million times I should check out, and I've just never gotten around to it. And I know I can get it on, I guess, Netflix at this point or something. So I probably should check it out one of these days. I miss William H. Macy. I haven't seen him in anything in a long time.
This role was made. I mean, it's not made for him, but it was made for him. Like, it's the role he was meant to play, and he will always be a Gallagher. I love him. I've always loved him, but he is stuck as a Gallagher from here on out. He just is.
Okay. Brian?
Number 19 for me is something of a departure. I watched the Korean 6-part show Hellbound, and it was a very interesting meditation on sin, judgment, and religion that actually makes a startling switch somewhere in the series. And if you watched it, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I encourage you to watch it with an open mind. It doesn't answer all of your questions, but it poses some really interesting questions about religion and events, more as a natural disaster and less of divine intervention. But really enjoyed it, and was kind of surprising for me. I'd read something about it, threw it on, and really caused some interesting thought. And, Korean dramas do stuff that American dramas are maybe less willing to do, shall we say. So there's some pretty interesting stuff in it. So check out Hellbound.
Ooh, interesting.
I've heard really good things. It is on my list. Now it'll probably move further up my list with your recommendation.
Very nice. Okay. My number 19, actually mentioned it when we were talking just before we started recording. My number 19 turns out to be Midnight Mass, a very, very late entry on the list because I literally just watched it this past weekend, finally. It's the 3rd series from Mike Flanagan, who gave us the fantastic Haunting of Hill House and the somewhat less so, as far as I'm concerned, Haunting of Bly Manor. I went into this pretty cold. I did not know anything about it beyond it being, I don't know, something about some charming priest and miracles that are inexplicable or something. I started to suspect what was hiding under all the religiosity pretty much by the end of the 1st episode, beginning of the 2nd one. I was certain by the 3rd episode. And
pretty good idea.
And as both the people joining me on the podcast here know, and especially Jamie, because you read the whole damn thing already, I was especially interested considering the subject matter of a script I recently completed a rewrite of, and I was like, oh, let me see how they handle this. I'm very curious right now. So yeah, I was very intrigued by it. Overall, I liked it. Obviously, it made my list. It does take a few gutsy narrative challenges that I think could put off some viewers. And I won't lie, I wasn't super happy with them myself at the time, but I respect what they were trying to do. Did I love the way the entire series unfolded and finished up? I'm not going to tell you I loved it, but I still thought it was a worthwhile watch overall. I will just make one nasty comment because I made it this weekend to my friends, and I said I should say this on the podcast, so I'm going to say it on the podcast. You know, back when when The Walking Dead first came on, and one of the first conceits we all had to get used to, like, oh, in this universe, there's no one's ever heard of something called a zombie, so they can never use that word, and they never have that thought, whatever. Okay, and I was like, okay, that's fine. If you're not a fan of like George Romero and certain things, maybe you might be unfamiliar with that to a certain extent, even though you'd still know the word. However, and I'm trying to be a little spoiler free here, but the thing that's once you dig beyond the religious, what Midnight Mass turns out to be about, or what the threat is. I'm sorry. Y'all should know what that is. No one knows. No one's heard of what that creature is and how you defeat it and what you can do. They
like right quick, right? Like within 5 seconds, like, yep, I got this.
Yeah, and I'm like, and at the end, then the situation that happens in the finale where, I'm going to do this in a vague way so it won't really spoil it. It's like, I guess there's nowhere for us to go now. It's like, I don't know, go in the woods and find some shade. Hey, you two, you're going to hang out by this little tiny bridge, with the body. Here's an idea. Why don't the two of you go under the little bridge, just hang out there for the next 9 or 10 hours, and then come up with it. Then it'll be dark again. Anyway.
There wasn't great problem-solving skills.
Yeah, no.
On the island.
Because then it made me respect my thing much more. Anyway, so... I mean, the name of my script is When the Sun Goes... Anyway. So, But otherwise, I liked it. I'm a big fan of the main actor in the show. And it took me like 5 minutes to recognize the other guy going, oh, God, Friday Night Lights kid. I haven't seen that kid since... Mm-hmm. And I looked him up on IMDb. I was like, oh, look at all these shows he's been in that I don't watch. Okay, so whatever. Anyway, let's swing back to number 18 and for Jamie.
All right. My number 18 is the newest season, which would be season 3 of Atypical. It is, I think that I might have had season 2 in my list last year. I can't be sure. But it's about Sam, who is a teenager who is on the autism spectrum, and about his family. And in this final season, season 3, it's about him like preparing to be able to leave home and handle life on his own, and he becomes obsessed with this idea of going to the Antarctic. And his parents are played by Jennifer Jason Leigh and Michael Rappaport, who's the sweetest man in the world on this show, so it's pretty funny. But it is very, very fulfilling. I've got a lot of finales on my list this year. We've had a lot of shows wrap up this year. This one is probably one of my favorite finales I've really got to see, because they didn't for sure say it's a finale, but they've pretty much led on that they're not getting renewed, so it's a finale. But they wrapped it up in a way that it didn't matter if they got another season or not. It was a perfect ending to this family story, and it's really, really easy to binge. So if you haven't checked it out and you need something to binge for a day, like any season, just throw it in and you will be on season 3. You won't even know what happened. It's good stuff. It really is. It's one of those shows that you put on and you're like, oh, crap, I've watched this for like 5 hours.
Nice. Brian.
At my number 18 is going to be Station 11. Now, this show possibly could end up in a way that it would have ended up higher, but as Scott said, it started last year and is still running as we speak. It's a surprising show. Not your typical post-apocalyptic show. It's more about how do you find meaning in the post-apocalyptic world. A lot about what the importance of art can be, and of course what traumas you carry with you. How do you find a way through those in a new world? And has a wonderful actress that I know all of us love, as the lead. from *Halt and Catch Fire*. Is it Mackenzie Phillips? Is that her name?
Davis. I think it's Mackenzie Davis. Mackenzie Phillips would be the daughter of
okay.
from the Mamas and the Papas.
I can't remember her name, but I remembered her when I saw her.
Yeah, it's Davis.
A wonderful show, a great cast. We get to see Lori Petty for the first time in a long time. David Cross is in the cast. So it's a very, very interesting show, and I'm intrigued how it will finish, but I've really enjoyed what I've seen so far, so that earned it the 18th spot on my list.
Nice. Like I said, I've only watched the first episode so far. I haven't been able to get myself to watch anymore yet, but it was only a couple days ago. I guess the last time I saw Laurie Petty was probably Orange is the New Black. I think that's the last time I saw her in something.
Yep, burying bodies in the garden.
There you go. So, my number 18. My number 18 is going to be Squid Game. You know how I was mentioning in Midnight Mass, I was a little less enthused about the ending, although I didn't hate it, whatever. Yeah, that kind of goes for the final 2+ episodes of Squid Game, which makes you wonder why I put it on my list. But I did spend half a podcast talking about this, because it took the world by storm. But look, the series itself, it's fucking awesome until the moment they get over the bridge, and then maybe not so much after that. But that 6th episode of the series, that secures its place on the list. And I'll just tell all you people, if for some reason you missed the podcast where I talked about it, and by the way, you should track it down. It's actually a pretty good podcast. If you can just not care that much about the stupid cop storyline, and just realize, hey, guess what? The actual Squid Game turns out to be the least interesting game of all the games that they play. And the guy who's maybe our hero is kind of a schmuck in the final episode. Put that aside, you'll love Squid Game, and that's why it's my number 18.
Yeah.
Jamais.
Okay, number 17. I have The White Lotus. I'm sure that at least one of you probably have it on your list. Here's the deal. I really, really enjoyed it. As you know, it's written by Mike White. I really enjoyed it, but there's also just a few things where it didn't make it further up on my list for reasons like Jennifer Coolidge, who we love, plays the same character she always plays, who we love, but it's the same character she always plays. Steve Zahn, pretty much playing the same character, who we always love, but the same character he usually is. But I have it on here because of Murray Bartlett, and he is phenomenal, and I would love to continue watching his character. And if they bring this other season in, if he was still like a part of it, I would have loved to watch it, because that's who I watched the show for. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm sure you guys would have something else to put on it if it's in your list.
I have stuff to say about that, but I don't know if it's going to come up again on the podcast, so I don't know if I should say anything right now.
All right. Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Okay, because I don't know what Brian's going to have on his list, so I don't know. But I'll tell you this.
You'll have an opportunity.
Okay, just so you know, it is definitely not on my list. So you can guess how I'm going to talk about it. So Brian, shoot.
At my number 17, one spot above Scott, I have Squid Game. Really enjoyed it. The visuals are absolutely striking.
Yes.
It's easy to understand why it caught on. I mean, it was incredible to look at. The story was interesting, enough of a mystery that it kept me entertained. Not thrilled with the ending either, but as a story and as something that caught my attention, I definitely wanted to keep binging and didn't want to stop once I started watching it. And that is after it had become a cultural phenomenon, and my natural resistance to do anything that everyone's doing had already kicked in. But this show overcame it, and I understood what was addictive about it. I love the old man character in the way that was portrayed in the series. I love the different types of personalities and the way the show used different personalities to show their strengths and working together, and the weaknesses of people that didn't. And I thought, it was a fascinating critique of capitalism and individualism. So I really enjoyed it. And despite the public acclaim, it still made my list. So
very nice. Brian, I actually blame you for my number 17. Coming in number 17 on my list, it's Reservation Dogs. Brian, I took your advice. I watched the show. Look at that. And I'm going to bet every cent I have in front of me, which is actually none, so I'm totally lying right now. There's no money on my computer table here. I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about it at greater length, and you are more eloquent than I am with stuff like this, so I'll leave that to you. All I'll say is I found it to be a very odd but pleasant surprise. It's not a tightly written or plot-heavy series, but it has there is such great emotional resonance to it, and when we finally, and each character does have their moment to shine in a almost specific, each one almost has a specific episode devoted to them, or practically devoted to them at least once during the course of the series. It just, the whole operation, it just felt really real and genuine and oddly moving. And, oh, by the way, what I said earlier about, we did this list, we should just be doing dramas or comedies. This is the one I would say, this is the first series on my list, which becomes that difficult to categorize show. Because I know that people would just simply slide it under comedy, and I understand that, but I think I have a hard time calling it that, but I wouldn't exactly call it a drama either. I guess this is a dramedy, I don't know. But I really enjoyed it. I was very happy that I actually gave it a shot. So thank you, Brian. Anyway.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's a good one.
J'aime.
Okay, so number 16 on my list is Pen 15, Season 2, Part 2. The season before this was on my list last year. It stars Maya Erskine and Anna Krankle. They play teenage versions of themselves in the early 2000s. So it's basically two grown-ass women pretending to be teenagers, but doing everything exactly the same way that they would have done it in high school. And so everything is really cringy and embarrassing and hilarious. There's that level that the show has had since the very beginning. But this last part, they did something that is so profoundly different from the rest of the show. They still have that humor there, but they really started to insert the reality of being this strange, awkward, lost teenager that's just goofy and a shit show to watch, and turning them into that place where everybody, hopefully, reaches where you start to realize that the world doesn't revolve around you. And that starts with kind of seeing that your family is its own entity and your parents are their own entity. And this strange world that so many teens find themselves in basically from your late teens until your early 20s, when you're really starting to find your foot in the world and what it means to be an adult and have real responsibility. And they did this in such a beautiful way that this stupid show that is just filled with one-liners and just really goofy, embarrassing moments, actually had me in tears 2 or 3 different times in the last 4 episodes. So it was like a cry fest at the end. It was ridiculous, but it is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. And the balls that these girls have to do some of the crap that they managed to do in this show, I just tons of accolades to them. I don't know. These ladies are crazy. Give it a shot. You won't regret it. Just don't watch it with children.
I've heard really good things about it, and it's on my queue.
All right.
I'd watch it, but the title makes me uncomfortable. All right.
Well, with that and not knowing where to go from there, I'm just going to go ahead and say my number 16 was the latest season of the Doom Patrol. A season I greatly enjoyed that took a turn, but had the wonderful addition of a new character that for the most part worked. sometimes I found that, and Scott and I will probably cover this in greater detail, hopefully soon. Sometimes turned away from maybe stories I wanted to focus on more. But a very visually stunning season, some real interesting ideas, and greatly enjoyed it. So my number 16 is going to be Doom Patrol.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So my number 16 will be season 1, the first season of Hacks. Has Jane Smart reached a point now in her career where I think we all feel she can simply do no wrong? Because I feel like that's the way she's being treated by everybody. And rightfully so. I get that. I actually reviewed this series way back when. I think there was a podcast. I don't remember what the main focus of the podcast was, but I think I squoze in a bunch of like HBO Max reviews. I remember talking about Hacks back then. So for anyone who has not checked this out yet, I mean, I would just describe it. Basically, what if Joan Rivers had a long-standing Vegas gig and hired some young female writer to help freshen up her material? But it's much better than that. Because, Gene Smart's basically the Joan Rivers-like character, whatever. It's a really good show. I'm looking forward to see where the next season and where it's going to go. And that's going to be like a refrain I feel like I'm going to have for a lot of the shows on this list moving forward. It's like, and I'm really looking forward to the next season. And some of them I'm really like, how the hell are you going to do with next season kind of a situation. So I love that. But it starts with Hacks here at number 16.
All right. So yes, that's going to bring it down to my number 15. And my number 15 is 9 Perfect Strangers. I kind of debated like the two places between The White Lotus and 9 Perfect Strangers, kind of went back and forth a little bit. But this one pulled up ahead because it kind of took a few unique twists where I feel like The White Lotus missed a few beats on something unique. Not that I'm complaining. I still liked the show and made my list. But anyway, back to 15. It is based off of the New York Times bestselling book by the same title by Lan Moriarty. And it's a story about a bunch of people that go to this boutique resort health spa place. And they all are, they have their own little problems that they're going through and troubles in their life that they're trying to deal with. And then when they get there to have some peace and kind of try to like reset everything, these events start to happen that make them realize that maybe all of them being there together was not coincidental, and maybe there's something else that's actually going on. So it has like a little like magical realism going on, and it like the plot changes 3 or 4 times. But it is really fun. It's a strange mystery. They tie it up perfectly fine. I have no real complaints about it. It was an enjoyable show, so it sits fairly close to the middle of my list.
Nice. I'm going to go with my number 15 is White Lotus. And I feel like I really enjoyed it. But at times some of it was empty calories. I did think there were some interesting ideas about being clueless and privilege and stuff that it said but sometimes it was a tad heavy-handed on those things. But like you, the resort manager was just a freaking delight. And the masseuse who had the relationship with the people who worked there were the more interesting characters. The visitors weren't as interesting to me as the staff, and I really enjoyed some of the heartbreak, some of the disappointment, and just some of the wackiness of the staff. But I agree that I think this probably could have been really great, but it just ended up being really good to me.
Yeah. I'm debating if I should do this or not. I gotta be me.
You gotta be you.
Gotta be me. Okay. I appreciate that both of you have it on your list, because we all have very different tastes at times.
I feel like we're at a counselor's office.
And I understand because it did get a healthy amount of acclaim, at least, reasonable, whatever. And I did, now, a couple weeks ago, especially as I was dealing with COVID, I decided to, I was binging series after series in preparation for this podcast, just in case there was trying to knock off things I might have missed. And I had heard about The White Lotus a bunch of times. And I like Mike White, I like Chuck and Buck, and whatever. He's not the be all and the end all. The people who raise him to this plateau is I'm sorry, he did the Emoji Movie too, so shut the fuck up, I think some people are giving him more of a thing because he was on Survivor one season, which I was inexplicable, but I kind of enjoyed him on that season. Anyway, my opinion on The White Lotus is, so I'm watching it, and I remember I was halfway through it, I'm going, I'm kind of finding myself really hating this show right now, and the only reason I'm going to continue with it is because I've heard so many people praising it, and maybe it'll be a 180, and I will love it by the end of it, and it'll make my list, whatever. That did not happen. As far as the guests are concerned, I don't think I like any character that was a guest remotely. I don't think any of them are even remotely cleverly written. I don't think any of them are remotely compelling. There's a few decent moments with them, but and trust me, there were many times I wanted to fast forward, and the only reason I didn't was because I want to be able to say I watched every minute of this. Unlike some close friends of mine, I have decided I am not a big fan of Jennifer Coolidge because and what you said before, Jamie, is spot on. It's I've seen this act before a million times, except now, she's not, but the weird pouty face thing, which is just I can't stand seeing it anymore. I can, and I can watch a show where you don't necessarily like the characters if the characters are just really well drawn and developed and compelling and they have really sharp dialogue. There's going to be a show that's going to be on my list which falls into that category. This show is not it. I hated the way most of the storylines wrapped up by the end of it. And then when Mike White has the gall at the end of all this to talk about the series and how he was really interested in showing a level of diversity and points of view in his series. And I was like, diversity? They're all rich white people. What? The girl's friend and, one of the people who works at I don't think you know what diversity means. No, there was a lack of diversity, and I get it. You're trying to make a comment about white privilege and whatever, which is funny because your name is Mike White. But but it's I don't think you did a really good job of that. I think there is actually, and there are shows that are going to be on my list that do a good job of that, and they don't hit you in the face with a sledgehammer because they they know how to write with something called subtlety. It got to a point where I think I hated everything about the damn series. Every time I heard the music, I started getting annoyed with it. I hated all the stupid tribal music crap, whatever. It was like watching, I kept thinking, are they going to final tribal council now or something? So it was exceptionally annoying.
Stop being so negative. Okay, have a good night, guys.
All right. So with all that said, what was I? Where we
go ahead and do your 15th, and then we'll all have done 20 through 15.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And hopefully an audio turning into a video chat doesn't screw up the recording when I try to figure out how to edit this later. So we'll see what happens. So my number 15 choice is, it's funny that he should be here because we actually talked about this. Dan and I just chatted about this on one podcast ago. It's Hawkeye. So there's not much to add beyond what we already talked about on, the last podcast. Just to reiterate how unexpectedly good the series turned out to be. The chemistry and the banter between Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld works better than it should. Florence Pugh, if that's how you pronounce her name, I probably screwed it up. She steals every single minute she's on screen. I think anyone who's a fan of Better Call Saul was delighted to see Tony Dalton have a silly role in this. And I actually had no problem with Vincent D'Onofrio's return as the Kingpin. So shut up, Got. Just a really, of all the MCU series this year, and if you think I'm not going to mention a couple more, you're wrong. But this was the one that actually genuinely surprised me because I went into this thinking, oh, really? Hawkeye? And they pulled it off really well.
Very nice. Okay, so now I'm going into my number 14, and my 14th is Yellow Jackets. There's still one episode to go. I feel confident in my choice. If you don't know what the show is about, it's really kind of hard to explain, except for basically it's like a group of girls that are on a soccer team, and then there's like a plane crash, and they crash into the wilderness of Ontario, and then the current storyline is them as adults, and so we're getting the whole story told in flashbacks, and all sorts of really, really weird crap happened when they were out in the woods, lost for a year and a half, and now as adults they're having to kind of again go through and face what they went through as kids, because there's some blackmailing stuff going on. Basically, and I've put this out on Facebook too, but the best way I can describe it is like if you took Alive meets The Lord of the Flies meets Pretty Little Liars meets a Bikini Kill music video. So it's a hodgepodge of weird things that are going on, but the cast is awesome. That's one of the biggest things that I love about this show. It's not just the cast of the characters as adults, because you got Juliette Lewis and Christina Ricci. And, I mean, just there's so many, like Ala Purnell and the a BSG alumni. Rika Shante and her beautiful hair is there as well. But these cast members, the cast that they have for their younger versions, these young women are such perfect picks for being the younger counterpart. It's so impressive whenever creators of a show can actually cast something so well. It's always impressive to me. But so far the show has been really weird and kind of creepy, and it's good stuff. My fingers are crossed for the final episode for the season, but I think it might be around for a few seasons. It's got the goods.
I'm glad you didn't spoil it because I've only seen one episode so far.
Yep.
So thank you for that. The one name you left out that just based on the first episode that probably needs to be mentioned more than the big quote unquote bigger name stars, so to speak, like a Ricci or Juliette Lewis, who kind of a little bit of has-beens anyway. Melanie Linsky. She's amazing.
She's awesome.
She's
awesome.
Amazing.
Okay, my number 14 is WandaVision. Really enjoyed the way this show morphed from a stylistic sort of gag through TV's history and sort of ran through the sitcom tropes of, my youth, to basically becoming a meditation on loss and trauma and grief. Really enjoyed the storytelling, really enjoyed the arc of the Vision in this, and seeing the wonderful Miss Olsen bring the goods from someone in denial to someone struggling mightily with her grief. I thought this was to be one of Marvel's shows. It went in a direction that the MCU hadn't that boldly before, to my eye. And so I really appreciated it and enjoyed it, and so that's why it made my list.
Well, my number 14 is actually one that, Brian, you mentioned a number or two ago. That would be the season 3 of Doom Patrol. Because just because we cover a series on the podcast doesn't mean it's going to be like in my top 3 or anything. Probably the only reason I didn't rank this season higher, well, number one, there's just a lot of really good shows. and you already spoke about it again eloquently as always. I would say I liked the final episode, especially for what happens with Rita Farr. But by the time the whole thing was over, I just felt something was missing that really would have been a nice way to lure viewers back for a fourth season. Maybe I just wanted a little bit of a cliffhanger or something. I don't know. And knowing what I know about the Doom Patrol, it may not have been practical. Maybe the actor didn't have time or whatever. But they had the stage set to bring back a truly great character from season 1 due to his actual connection to the Sisterhood of Dada, which it plays a major part throughout the season. And they didn't so much as drop a mention of him. And if they had just done that, just made a reference, just done something to make us think, could he possibly show up? That alone might have had it show up, but without it, Anyway.
Yeah, and I think what I think ultimately probably hurt the show more to me, to speak to what you're saying about, is we had, shows occasionally decide to separate characters for long stretches of time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we saw enough of the Doom Patrol together this season for me.
I agree. That's without going too off track. That's always a risk and it's an elemental risk. The whole idea is when you have a group of characters, dramas usually derive from, okay, let's split them up. So part of the story is, when do we get them all back together? I mean, basically that's every season of Lost,
Right.
So, and sometimes it works, and sometimes you get a little frustrated. Everything you said before kind of is why you don't get as frustrated with Doom Patrol season 3, but it's still, there's a reason why it wasn't in my top 10, and that kind of, I think that's probably the rest of why it wasn't.
Yeah.
Jamais.
All right. Speaking of getting characters back together, my number 13 is Wheel of Time, Amazon's new series based off of the novels, the many, many, many novels by Robert Jordan. And it's a fantasy show. It's a battle between dark and light, good and evil, that sort of thing. Basically, like the best way to sum it up is it's a bit like Game of Thrones with a little bit more magic and a lot less rape.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, here's the thing
I really don't
with
want to
the
watch
series.
it now.
With this series so far is I really, really like it. I do have a few problems with it, mostly being set design. Occasionally, you kind of get it. It's not like it all the time, but every so often you get like a little whiff of like Xena. It's not quite up to par all the time, the set design. That being said, the story is great. Obviously, there's so many of these novels written for a reason, because it's great storytelling. It is everything that fantasy novels should be, with the magic and the battles and all of these things. So if you can kind of get past we've been spoiled with some of these like massively huge budget shows, and this show has a huge budget. Like, don't get me wrong, it's costing them millions per episode, so I'm not quite sure what the deal is there, but we are so used to these like CGI dragons and stuff that just look phenomenal, and they didn't put all of their work in and all of the budget into that, and so maybe that's it. But the story itself, the soul of the story is great. And I kind of went back and forth on it for the first couple episodes, but once I got into that third or fourth, I was in, and I am super excited for the new season to come out. But if you like fantasy stuff, it's good to watch. But like I said, the set design really irritates me. As an artist, it just drives me nuts. Like, could we maybe make this look a little bit less like like a birthday party set? But the story is great, and you should give it a shot before I talk it down too much. But
I totally agree.
I have high hopes.
Totally agree. I read the Jordan novels, so it's not actually on my list. And I think the problem I have is more with casting. But I love Rosamund Pike and the guy who plays her warder.
Yes, yes, they're great for it.
they're really great on it. But I agree with you that there are times that the set design takes you out of the world, and
Right.
So
when they're in the woods, it's great. When they're in a castle, not so.
But I would recommend it. It is. I did watch the whole thing and enjoyed it. But don't expect something grand.
Right. If by all means, I have not heard anybody who has read the novels that has not been content with how they are telling the story, that they really like it. So
yeah, that helped me with it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with. Let's see, we're on 13. My number 13 is Lupin off of Netflix, and I really enjoyed the stylistic Paris crime caperness of this. This is basically, I would say, this is like a BBC type show that you'd usually see produced by them, but it's made in France. And the lead character, Omar Sy, the actor, is just incredibly. He's just a badass, and it's not a huge commitment. I mean, it doesn't have 28 episodes or whatever, but if you want something different, it looks good. The main actor is super charismatic, and it's a really cool kind of caper type show. Really enjoyed it.
Nice.
It's funny, whenever I hear the title of that show, all I think of is an old iconic Monty Python sketch. So it's hard for me to bring out your Lupins. Anyway. Number 13 for me, I'll go to Netflix as well for season 5 of Big Mouth. Now, there are probably at least three or four, I should say, more series that are going to show up on this list that fall under the, comedy heading. But I'll tell you right now, Big Mouth is probably funnier than almost all of them. It's actually probably the dramatic turns those other shows made, which might have popped them ahead of Big Mouth on this list. But this show, it's the raunchiest and also the most honest series about growing up that I think I've ever seen. I mean, no offense to the original Wonder Years, but this is really what growing up is about, people. And a special kudos for the show. They, every time they bring back David Thewlis as the Shame Wizard, it's so amazing. I love how the series embraced hate this season, and the wonderful meta jokes of the final episode that I won't reveal here for those who haven't watched it yet. But I will say this, especially one specific gag will be especially appreciated by fans of BoJack Horseman. And I'll leave it at that. If you've seen the season, you already know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, I just love the show so much. It's one of those when you hear it's coming back, you're like, oh, I gotta set aside a weekend for that. Because there's few shows I know that I can guarantee I'm gonna laugh my ass off. This is one of them.
All right. Okay, so that is me at 12, and my number 12 is Dexter: New Blood. So we got a new final season, right? That's basically what happened. The writers went, everybody hated the way that we ended the original series. Let's really find a new ending for this. I don't want to spoil it because, Scott, I know that you haven't watched it yet. And I know that there's probably other people that haven't finished it up or haven't even started it yet who want to. But if you don't know what Dexter is, then you've been listening to the wrong podcast. Everyone knows what Dexter is. But the season it moved along really nicely. And it ended the way I felt it should have ended. I don't have many complaints. Any complaints I have, I'm going to save for another time when we can talk about them without doing any spoilers. And we got a couple new faces, obviously. I really like everybody that they cast alongside of Michael C. Hall. I really don't have a complaint out of the bunch. All in all, I would say it's a thumbs up, 90%. Good job. And I really look forward to when you actually get to watch it, Scott, so we can complain about the same things.
Well, if he ends up in like some sort of multiverse where he meets Michael C. Hall from 6 Feet Under and something like, anyway. Funeral home, morgue. Are you seeing?
Okay, so my number 12 is going to be Hacks with Gene Smart. I enjoyed it. Thought it was sort of in that dramedy type place. Loved Gene Smart. Liked the actress that played, the young writer. Took me a little while to warm to her, but their adventures, I thought what was cool about it was seeing sort of Las Vegas as a character in the show and sort of that world. I enjoyed in particular, like the, trips to the pawn shops and the dealers and the art dealers and things like that. I like that it established this universe of, sort of the Vegas residency people. And what that life was like. I thought that was cool to see that, but greatly enjoyed the performances. I thought, and I hope in season 2 that we see her go on stage and kill, because I thought maybe the thing that lacked from pushing it further forward from me is, yeah, she's sort of a legacy act, but I wanted to, even Joan Rivers as a legacy act still went up and killed, I wanted to see her go on stage and completely demolish. And I don't think we saw enough of that. We saw her get her confidence back, and hopefully season 2 leans into maybe her resurgence a little more.
I think it's always a difficult thing when you have either a TV series or a movie or what have you that's based around any kind of stand-up comedian. Unless they're an actual stand-up comedian, they're rarely very funny.
Right.
If you think about it, whether it's Hacks or the marvelous Mrs. I mispronounced the last name.
Maisel.
Thank you. Someone corrected me. Someone corrected me. In a thing. I couldn't remember if I mispronounced it or whatever. Or if you go back to movies like Punchline or other movies, whatever. It's always like, yeah, something about it's really hard to pull off. It's like they don't know how to be funny in those things. But anyway, sorry.
Listen, being funny is a natural thing. You either have it or you don't have it. It's just you can fake drama. You can't fake funny.
Right. Gotcha. It was like this. It's like me watching this roundtable the other day. I think it was from last year, maybe. One of those Hollywood Reporter roundtables, which I love when they get all the 6 or 7 performers all together. And this roundtable, it had De Niro was there, who's, generally a bore, but it was kind of fun here. Hanks was there, Adam Driver, Jamie Foxx was there, whatever. For some reason, Shia LaBeouf was there, whatever. And Adam Sandler was there. And it was really interesting listening to Adam Sandler because it was when he was not promoting, it was when he was on the award circuit for Uncut Gems. That's right. But they were talking about comedy. And they even brought up that movie that Tom Hanks was in, Punchline, from a million years ago, which was not a very good movie, but apparently is revered by stand-up comedians. They all love that movie, and Sandler was talking about that and how and the difficulty of pulling off that role, and it's hard to be funny on screen in that as a stand-up comedian, whatever. It just made me think of that. Anyway. I'll stop. Let me get back to the countdown. Number 12. My number 12 for me was, Mythic Quest Season 2. Now, if y'all listen to my little solo podcast that I closed out the year with, and you really should because it was a really good one, you already know how much I already gushed about this series. It's a little bit of Always Sunny mixed in with a whole lot of Community, maybe a little dash of Parks and Rec here and there. Like I said, you should really check out that podcast. I worked my ass off for it. I had the COVID during it and everything. Anyway, this is just one of those under the radar kind of series I just like recommending to everyone. And as I talked about at length in the in that podcast, there's a couple really dynamite and dramatic episodes in this season. Those are reason enough to check out the series. I don't want to say that much about it. Maybe I should, because maybe if people haven't listened to the podcast, maybe they don't know what I'm talking about, but they should have listened to it. It's kind of a dysfunctional company that's behind one of the most popular video games in the world or something. And you've got people who are there that you'll recognize from those aforementioned sitcoms, like your main character, who's also one of the co-creators of the show. We all know from Mac from It's Always Sunny. They've got Danny Pudi, who is Abed from Community in this, and I'm going to use the word correctly. He is literally the anti-Abed on this show. It's so obviously they deliberately did that. It's hysterical. It's just such a really fine show. I recommend it highly.
Nice. Okay, moving on to number 11 on my list, and it is Maid. Scott, you were right. You knew it was going to show up. Okay, it's inspired by the chronicled memoirs of a single mother named Stephanie Land, and she basically chronicles her escape from an abusive relationship as a single mom and navigating through a very, very flawed system. And doing whatever she needs to do to be able to successfully live her life and get an education. What makes this story and this show so great isn't just the story itself, because obviously that's very inspiring and there's a lot of parts that are quite moving and upsetting. But I think it's such an honest depiction of what it takes to navigate a system that was built, it was supposed to be built to help people. And the way that the system is set up is that it just undoes it undoes everything. You get one place and then this next step undoes everything that you just did. And how hard it is to be able to manage all of these different things. It kind of puts into a concrete belief for me that if you are an HR or an admin department and somebody applies for a job and you know they've been on any government assistance, hire them. Hire this person, because the amount of paperwork and red tape some people will have to go through to get minimal assistance is mind-boggling. So it does a great job at shining a light on this, shining a light on mental illness. Everybody in it was top notch. It stars Margaret Qualley from, you remember from The Leftovers, and her mother, Andie MacDowell, who was fantastic in this role. It doesn't matter if you aren't a single parent, and it doesn't matter if you aren't a woman who's been in an abusive relationship or even a man who's been in an abusive relationship. It's one of those shows that everybody should watch because the amount of education you're going to get is so vast, and it's really easy to watch. It's not something you have to fumble through. It's so great. Scott, I know you got a long list. This one should stay on it. It's got to be on your list to watch.
Oh, very well, but not but not the other one.
But not the other one.
My number 11 is going to be Hawkeye. I went into this with low expectations and found that the focus on this small story with the characters, and I think around Christmas time watching this and thinking about wanting to be home with your kids and seeing a kid in trouble and wanting to be a mentor, wanting to do better, seeing somebody towards the end of their career and closer to the end than at their beginning. The whole thing really resonated with me personally. I thought that the female talent on the screen was outstanding. The story wasn't, the biggest in the Marvel universe, but this small story I thought they told very effectively. And it had really, really a good resonance with me, and there was something about the idea of being a hero in a small moment that I thought was worth telling, because a hero in the Marvel universe is often somebody who can do things none of us can, but Hawkeye in this show, I thought, showed what being a hero can be, being a mentor, being a good dad. And I like the way that they went back and addressed some of the Ronin things that we've seen before in the Marvel universe. So Hawkeye is my number 11.
Feels like we're tag teaming and switching places with where we're putting our comic book related shows so far, because my number 11 is WandaVision. Now, COVID, I think, screwed up the intended order of the Disney Plus MCU series and when they actually aired, but oddly enough, or maybe not so oddly, it paid off bigger dividends for them by kicking off their year with WandaVision. I felt the series was something, I thought they took chances. I know that they alienated a certain number of impatient viewers out there with those first couple episodes. Fortunately, people like me, you, Dan, we were not among those people because we have, working brains. The show itself, I think it alternated between hitting real home runs with the way they really deepened the characterizations of Wanda Maximoff and the Vision. And you got that lovely Agatha All Along song. And they whiffed a few times. Look, if you listen to our podcast that we did, that whole Pietro boner stupidity. Anyway, and the underwhelming felt like the third act of every other so-so MCU movie, but less so finale kind of bugged me. I mean, I'll just say, if they'd stuck the landing with their finale, WandaVision would have leaped into my top 5. But as it turned out, it's just peeking over the hedges like a nosy neighbor in an old sitcom. It's just peering at the top 10. It didn't quite make for me. But number 11 ain't bad for WandaVision.
Yeah.
All right, so we just got through 20 through 11. It took us an hour and change. Okay. And as if people were listening about 15, 20 minutes ago, Daniel has popped in. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Scott?
Anyway.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to go around the room. I mean, if anyone has anything they on their mind as far as either disappointments or surprises, we can, if everyone has something, we can just do disappointments first, get the negative out of the way, and then maybe a surprise thing after. We haven't discussed this beforehand. Maybe I should have. I don't know. Do you guys have something prepared for this by any chance?
Yes. Falcon and Winter Soldier, man. Wow. I mean, I've expected more of that, and I think it failed. It failed for the very reason that Hawkeye succeeded, that it tried to appear big, but wasn't telling that big of a story, and wasted 2 characters, so much so that a large part of it, I just didn't care. I watched it to finish it. I didn't love it. I didn't enjoy it that much. And by far the worst of the Marvel Disney Plus shows.
I am shocked I didn't put that down as my biggest disappointment of the year. Because I think I spent more time this year ragging on that show than almost praising anything else.
I'm sorry that you blocked it out, and I made you recall it.
Because I call it Sammy and the Snowman or the Felk, but I mean, it's got like 3 things I liked about it, and the rest I hated. And people who defend it, I'm just like, I don't take you seriously if you really like this series. I'm sorry. Jamie, I'm sorry. Go on.
I was going to name that show I was going to name that Falcon and the Winter Soldier as a surprise, actually, because while I can see why you guys were disappointed, I kind of felt that maybe it was, it just worked really well. A lot of really interesting characters, like U.S. Agent was pretty cool, and that one episode where Captain America got pulled over for being black or whatever. I mean, that was really effective, really subtle. I mean, that's why Atlanta wasn't on last year, because once I saw what they were doing on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they're just like, fuck it. Whatever. So, I can speak with authority of the black experience. So that's why Falcon and the Winter Soldier is my number one show for 2021.
I for about 30, 40 seconds, my sarcastic meter wasn't working, and then it finally kicked.
And then you realize Dan's been in the bullpen for a little while, and yes, he does still have his fastball. He's warmed up.
Oh man, Jamie, anything disappoint you so far last year?
You know what? Here's the deal on this. How everyone makes dumb resolutions at every New Year. I made one, and that was if I don't like it in 2 episodes, I'm out. And so, you know what? No, I don't actually have any real disappointments, because anything that I watched that I didn't start to really like within halfway through the second episode, I just forgot existed and moved on. Oh. It's been great. It's a great way to do things.
I know. And it makes for a great podcast segment, so that's cool.
You bet. It's full of information.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that.
Endless dialogue.
Since I can't use the White Lotus because I already shredded that earlier. Piece of shit show. Anyway, and did I need to see it coming out of his? Okay, anyway, I'm sorry. Hey, there's something I've never seen before, and I didn't need to see that. No, I'm my biggest disappointment of the year. And I heard, and there's rumor that the second half of the season got better, and although some people who praise it, I don't trust their taste because I've seen them like things I think suck. So I don't usually trust anyone's opinions other than my own. I've realized at this point, but I can't believe I did this. I bailed about roughly midway through, maybe after 4 or 5 episodes, and I think Brian, you and I actually talked about it a little bit, so you know where I'm going with this. I have been looking forward to an adaptation of Y: The Last Man for a decade. And I was so excited it was finally happening. And it's not that it was quote unquote bad. It just wasn't as good as it should have been or could have been. I mean, a lot of it maybe had to do with, we had talked before about the casting of the main character, the Y: The Last Man. And again, it's not that he was bad. It's just, I don't know. It didn't work for me. And I know some people really like the changes that they've obviously updated things to reflect what's been going on in the world over the last few years. I didn't mind that, but I kept thinking, I feel like you're doing that at the expense of doing something better with the main character, who after 4 or 5 episodes, I still felt he's still not that interesting. And that's a problem. If your main character isn't very interesting, I don't know where to go with that. So I'm going to say that's my biggest disappointment, because the fact that I bail, and I it's hard for me to bail on shows. Jamie, I think that's a great resolution. I do that sometimes, but I felt guilty about this.
I'm going to tell you, it's actually you and Dan that convinced me that this was the way to go, because I held on to The Walking Dead for far too many years until you guys were like, no, you can let these shows go. And you know what? You can. It's amazing.
Oh, I think I even remember, Dan, you delivering that sermon to her about that. Right? I do remember that.
I mean, now my kid is really into it, and he wants to see how it ends, and there's 4 episodes left. So obviously we're going to watch it, but I did it on all the other shows.
Right. There you go.
Well, I will tell you, Scott, that I'm like you. I tend to finish just about anything I start. There are 2 or 3 episodes of Y: The Last Man on my DVR that I've not watched. I see it on there, and the completist in me wants to click play, but I'm like, oh, hey, look, there's a random beam of sunlight coming in the window. Let me look at that instead.
it's like, oh, and I think some of you, or maybe all of you, can relate to this. I know Daniel can. Jamie, we talked about this like a year ago. I've still never gone back to watch those last couple episodes of The Stand.
It's okay. It is okay.
I still feel I need to watch because I know I'm gonna hate it, but because I love The Stand so much, I still kind of want to see what they did just to see it.
I think that it's healthy at this point that you're going to hate it, and if you can go in watching it to find out why everyone else hated it, I think you're on solid ground. But I'm glad you took the time to separate yourself from it, because it is a shit show.
I just think it's funny when I look back, like, wait, wasn't that one of the main reasons I got, well, back then it was still CBS All Access, now it's Paramount Plus, was because The Stand is coming?
Yes, all of us, right?
Meanwhile, there's a bunch of other actually pretty good shows on that thing, apparently, but The Stand is like the worst thing I've seen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All sorts of bad. All sorts of bad.
Should we switch over to surprise? Dan, unless there's anything you wanted to throw in here beyond your Falcon and the Winter Soldier accolades.
No, most of my stuff will be tied into the shows that I talk about, so
cool.
I'm good. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so since you've started, I'll follow my way back to Brian. Brian, your biggest surprise of the year?
A little. I didn't include it on my list because there were so many good shows. But I purposefully included it here as a surprise. One of my favorite pieces of art of 2021 was Bo Burnham's Inside. Knowing his history of sort of being a YouTube guy, making silly songs and whatever, I turned that on, and I think somewhere in the middle of it, I texted Jamie and said, "Holy shit, Jamie, have you seen this?"
And I was like, I watched it twice already.
Yeah. And I watched it again the other day. And I think the creator in me that sits here amongst a mountain of recording gear and guitars and stuff is fascinated by how he did it, the way he did it, and the creativeness of what he did in a room to sort of document his own journey through COVID isolation. I have the soundtrack on my phone and I listen to it still. Some of the songs I still listen to. It is one of the best pieces of art made in the last 5 years. Maybe longer.
I concur. And I will speak more of that later.
Ooh. Any surprises for you, Jamie?
Yeah, actually, I already talked about it for a second, but Yellow Jackets actually surprised me. I knew from the previews and what I had read, it seemed intriguing. I didn't realize I was going to like it as much as I did. And to kind of swing it back over to Stephen King, he's been hooked on it, and he's been just tweeting up a storm about it left and right. So it's Stephen King approved.
Well, there you go.
So Yellow Jackets isn't a show about the ephedrine at the gas station that my boss would send me to buy for early 2000s? No?
Chugging a sixer.
Oh, Lord. For me, I'm kind of torn between two. I'll just use both. Who cares? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to mention, it's going to be an odd choice for me because it really should not have been that big a surprise at all. And I'm going to reference Only Murders in the Building here. Because there's definitely a couple series I discovered this year and watched a couple seasons worth of and got into like Mythic Quest or Evil, but picking something that debuted this year, the funny didn't surprise me, but how well crafted the mystery element of the show did surprise me. Selena Gomez surprised me. So that's why when I was trying to think of what was my biggest surprise, that was the first thing that popped into my head. And it wasn't until earlier.
Selena Gomez should always be everyone's number one surprise of the year.
Right. Anyway, I was about to say something, then I realized don't say that on a podcast. So, and it wasn't even about her. But anyway, somehow I have a thing for Billie Eilish all of a sudden. Anyway, so, but then earlier today, I realized, oh, there was something that was actually a bigger surprise for me, and I forgot until I realized it was coming back tonight. Actually, it's a weird choice, but I gotta mention it. It's Superman and Lois, of all things. I mean, I was sure that was going to be like your basic big train wreck, as much as anything I tend to force myself to sit through on the CW over the last few years. And it actually turned out to be pretty good. I mean, the whole idea of like Superman with kids, and I know they've been doing that in the comics now, but I've caught up on what they're doing in the comics the last 10 years, and it's fucking bonkers. I was like, oh, I feel like old man on the lawn. Like, it's not my comics, whatever. But I'm genuinely shocked by how much I like this show. I don't know what the hell happened to me, but it's become the one CW superhero related show that I look forward to watching. So that would be my other. I mean, it's not making my top 20. I'm not that crazy, but it's definitely at least makes my biggest surprise of the year list.
Can I ask you a question, Scott?
Sure.
Were you surprised? I mean, I agree it's surprisingly good. Were you surprised that they were including kids and initially thought, oh crap, that's going to be shitty, and it actually turned out pretty good?
Yes.
That was one of the, as you talked about it, that was one of the surprises for me. I thought, oh great, here we go. Let's add kids to a CW show. What could possibly go wrong? And the kids, the kids actually
right there.
The kids actually, in some of the stuff involving them, I thought turned out a lot better than I had hoped it would.
I love the conceit of, and it's such an elemental idea for them to have two sons, and one appears to have powers and the other one doesn't, which, it's like, it's so obvious, and yet it works so well. And yeah, I was like, oh, really? We're going to get teen angst? Because, I never see that on a CW show.
Right.
But, yeah, and they even, I don't know what their budget is, but they've done a reasonably decent job as far as pulling off the Superman stuff. They've done a better job with the outfit than when we first saw this guy, when he first appeared on one of the other CW shows, like, Supergirl, wherever the fuck it was. Again, I'm not saying it's the greatest thing ever. I'm not putting it in the same. It doesn't rank with some of those MCU shows that we've seen this year or anything like that. But it's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I think the less than high praise that I think sums it up is if you go in expecting it to be incredibly hokey, it's actually not that much, and it's pretty decent.
Yeah. Alrighty then. So let us shift back. We are now, let's see, we're within a few minutes of the hour and a half mark. That's not so bad. Okay, I figured it's where we'd be right now. We are going to get back to our top 10 lists. And now that we have Daniel here, Dan, why don't we let you kick things off here with your number 10 choice?
Okay, thanks, Scott. My 10th favorite show of 2021 is the second season of Evil, a show that Scott suggested that I watch at some point, and then like a year and a half later I watched it, and he was right. It's good. There's definitely like a lot of stuff going on in the show at this point. They have a lot of loose threads that they haven't tied together yet, which is fine because I'm patient and I have a working brain. But it was an enjoyable season of a good, interesting, different show. So.
That is an excellent choice. Wait for it.
So is it my turn now? Are we continuing the cycle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I didn't think I had to explain that.
I just wanted to make sure we were going Uno, on here. Okay. So my number 10 is actually a movie made for Netflix, and it is The Harder They Fall, which was written and directed by James Samuel. And it stars everybody. It's everybody. Like, everybody's in this movie, pretty much. And it is a Western, or like a re-envisioned Western, that is about real people, but the stories are fictional, and everyone also happens to be Black. The entire cast, the entire main cast is Black. It is just, it's mind-boggling. Like this, it's so much. This is the only time I'm going to use this word, guys. It is the funnest movie of the year. It is so fun. Made for TV movie. Maybe not in the theaters, because I haven't seen Spidey yet. But and the music was written specifically for the film. So, I mean, everything is ties together so well. But I will tell you that it's nice to know that, you know, when certain directors like Tarantino decide he's retiring, which he's mentioned that he's kind of retiring from filmmaking, we have people that can step in and really fill that genre. And this is one of those. It's great. It's fun. That's all there is to it.
Well,
Awesome.
That's why I like having you on the podcast, Jamie, because normally I pick a movie like on a list of TV shows just to be a jackass, but you do it with like total earnest, like
I do it
positivity.
straight up because it was within the guidelines and rules written out when I hit accept terms.
this is true.
She had it checked by her lawyer, and I said it was okay.
I love the fact that I did not know. I don't know what anyone's lists were going to contain. And I actually used that as an example in the rules early on. I thought you would have the other one, and I didn't know that was going to be. Now explains why you like my script. Anyway, go.
There you go.
Brian,
My number 10 is the Amazon Prime original Invincible, which was a really deep adaptation of a graphic novel about a young kid who discovers he's starting to have powers and what that presents for his responsibility to guard the planet, and some of the family dynamics with having a human mom and a superhero dad, and things get really interesting and dark in this show in a way that was surprising and enjoyable, and I'm really looking forward to season 2.
I love that you have that in the list. So awesome. This is going to be too funny. So my number 10. Wow. Did not expect to be peas in a pod this early on. My number 10 is season 2 of Evil. So, yeah, nicely done. That's why I was cracking up when you had it at number 10. So for everyone else out there, if you've got Paramount Plus and you're not watching Evil yet, then you need to add a resolution to your New Year's list and watch this series. I mean, Katya Herbers is Kristen. She's an increasingly complex and fascinating lead female character. Christine Lottie is her absolutely bonkers mom. She's probably having the most fun she's ever had in her entire career with this character. I mean, Mike Coulter, he's solid. Asif Manvi is surprisingly effective at dramatic scenes for someone who's obviously from the world of comedy. And obviously, last but not least, you've got Michael Emerson chewing his way through every last piece of scenery with an insane level of glee. The only thing I'm going to say, and I'm saying that, and not that they'll ever hear this podcast, but I'll imagine they do. Hey, Robert and Michelle King, the creators, could you please find a way to cross Evil over with either the Good Fight or maybe go back in time and cross it over with the Good Wife? Come on, bring in the ghost of Will Gardner or something like that. That would be amazing. You can do it. You can put them in the same universe. You can do it. Do it. Anyway.
What was the name of the character Coulter played on the Good Fight, the drug kingpin? Oh,
geez. I'd have to think about. Oh, wow.
If you did a crossover, you could have him meet himself, his doppelganger.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, absolutely. And then you could have Michael Emerson meet the actress who's actually his wife and plays a great recurring character on both The Good Wife and The Good Fight. I keep waiting for her to show up on this. I'm forgetting the actress's name. She was on True Blood as well. She's one of the only things I liked about that stupid show. But it's his actual wife, whatever. Anyway, getting derailed. Let's get back to number 9. So we'll go back to Daniel.
All right, my number 9 show is the third season of What We Do in the Shadows. I thought it was a good season, pretty funny. I maybe not quite as memorable as the previous a couple seasons, but I still, there weren't any episodes that I didn't like. So, just a good, consistent show that I look forward to watching. Funny.
Very nice. Very nice, Dan, because my number 9 also happens to be What We Do in the Shadows, Season 3. And I kind of wrote out on here, it's probably my favorite season so far because all of their storylines, like their individual character lines, like have them on their own like little missions in life, which is pretty fun. Is like I wrote here that Nadia is on a mission of self-discovery. Nandor is in the search for meaning and what life's meaning is. Laszlo is on the search for ancient porn, ? And Colin Robinson is on the search for whatever the hell Colin Robinson is. Also, Christian Shaw as the guide has been just a delight because I don't know how you can't love her. How can you not love her? It's no exception in this. She's great.
Yeah, great show. My number 9, and this is where I'm probably going to surprise people. A lot of people have this like right at the top, and I really enjoyed it. But my number 9 is going to be Mayor of Easttown. I liked this show a lot. I liked Kate Winslet getting completely vulnerable, not allowing them to, make her look anything other than an exasperated middle-aged woman living a very real life. And a great, great scene. We talk about Jean Smart. Jean Smart and her relationship is wonderful in the show. We get, an appearance by Roy from The Office. David Denman plays her ex-husband, Guy Pearce, in one of the big MacGuffins of the year. But I enjoyed it. It was a good show. It wasn't as crimey mystery. The mystery wasn't, that big a deal to me. That didn't keep me on the seat of my pants, but enjoyed seeing this shot in a very real locale, a very real story, and thought it was nicely done. So that's my number 9.
Nice. He's more of a red herring than a MacGuffin, but anyway. I can't help myself. I'm sorry. By the way, I came this close to changing the order during the just because I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if that was my number 9 also? But then I've kept it the way it was. My number 9 is going to be the season 2 of Ted Lasso. The dramatic beats when we shatter the facade of Ted Lasso's perfect positivity were probably the most resonant takeaway from season 2. Although I think many of the supporting players had their own shares of heavy lifting done pretty effortlessly, this cast, throughout the season. It's just, there's a reason why people are constantly talking about this goddamn show. Now, I actually talked about it a lot on that podcast I mentioned earlier. That's why I don't want to talk about it too much now. But yeah, everyone's heard of it. And if you haven't seen it, the only reason you haven't seen it is because you don't have Apple TV. If you get Apple TV, you watch Ted Lasso. It kind of goes without saying.
If I had Apple TV, it'd be the first thing I watched.
Yeah. Jamie, aren't you one of the Buffy people, or am I totally whiffing on that one?
Yeah.
The fact that you have the actor who played Rupert on Buffy play a character named Rupert on this, and whereas Rupert on Buffy is he's like your favorite guy. And Rupert on Ted Lasso, he's like the worst motherfucker in the fucking universe. He's not really in the show very much, but when he does appear, I was like, oh, did they cast him that way on purpose? They named him Rupert, come on. Anyway, number 9, Ted Lasso season 2. So let's go to number 8 and back to Dan.
Hey, my number 8 is the second season of the animated Star Trek series, Lower Decks. I know Scott didn't like or didn't want to like the first season, but this season's definitely an improvement over the first season, which I liked too. But they're just kind of doubling down on like the goofy little Star Trek references and stuff like that. But it actually ended up being just a really solid, thorough show with some drama, but mostly comedy. But it's a lot of fun, and for people who like grew up watching Star Trek or like the Star Trek shows in the '90s and stuff, there's a lot of fun stuff in there.
All right. So my number 8 is going to be Evil Season 2. You guys have pretty much said everything that there is to say, except for I would like to add that I have found Season 2 to be, I've liked it better than the first season. I think moving it from CBS into the streaming format has given them a little bit more freedom on how far they can push certain storylines. It's made it a little bit deeper, a little bit more interesting. And for anybody who's on the fence, if they want to watch it or not, I feel that the idea of seeing Michael Emerson like cook and eat a goat demon should probably seal the deal.
I'm going to confess that Evil is not on my list only because I don't have Paramount Plus. But I loved season 1. And I hope to get season 2, get to see that. So based on where you all rank it, I'm sure I will love it as much as season 1.
Yes.
But my number 8 is going to be Ted Lasso. I enjoyed it. It was, I was late to the Lasso party. So I binged through season 1 and started season 2. And I thought it wasn't as good as season 1, but it only lost a little bit of the magic of season 1. And I thought it was good to see them take chances and break the perfect world of Ted Lasso. So I really enjoyed it. The writing room and the people in that show really have found a story that could have been done in a really hackneyed way and told it with a lot of heart. So I really enjoyed it. So that's my number 8.
Jamie Okay. So, oh, by the way, Dan, I loved your phrase, like, how you described my feelings towards Lower Decks, like that you didn't like it or you didn't want to like it or something. Just like that. I caught that. That's very funny. I laughed. And since a number of us have mentioned Evil, I also do want to mention it's very sad to know that Peter Scolari passed away this year, so he obviously won't be on the show again. And because I remember when I saw Peter Scolari, I was like, oh my God, Peter Scolari! I don't think I've seen him since Newhart. So anyway.
I like Peter Scolari's character on that show, and the way he interacted with somebody like Ben the Magnificent, who just didn't have any patience for that stuff. For whatever reason, those two characters play off each other really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my number 8. So look, I'm switching places, tag teaming with Hewlett yet again, because my number 8 is Mayor of Easttown. So no, it's not going to be at the top of the list. So all I'm going to say is, man, do I love Kate Winslet. And I'm a little bit of a fraud saying that because I haven't actually watched anything she's been in for the last 15 years. You have to go back to Little Children, I think. But anyway, she's terrific in this little small town mystery. It kind of had that feel of some of those really good British series like Happy Valley or Broadchurch. Actually, for a while there, I just assumed it was a remake of one of them, but it turns out, nope, it's an entirely original piece. It made me like Evan Peters, putting aside the whole Pietro Boner crap. I never really cared for him on all those American Horror Story seasons, but man, he is on point here, especially that episode where he's supposed to be drunk. So good.
Oh, yeah. My
favorite little thing about the show that I discovered not that long ago, was looking through some trivia about it, was, and I think this was when I did the asshole Scott thing of correcting more the red herring thing, the unusual move of casting a star like Guy Pearce in a relatively small role that had some people thinking, oh, he must be the killer. I love the fact he started filming the day before everything shut down due to COVID. So he was basically on set for one day, then COVID happened. Then they resumed several months later. And when they resumed filming, they had certain people had to be quarantined together. So he had to be quarantined with Kate Winslet. Kate Winslet turns out to have had a childhood crush on Guy Pearce. So I just love the story of like she gets the, and then just by living with him, she started to get annoyed with like, the way he would be about like the recycling bins and things like that. It was driving her crazy. It's like, meanwhile, but when she was a kid, she had a big crush on him. But anyway, yeah, and Jean Smart, we've already mentioned a number of times, but who really deserves to be mentioned, yes, more than Jean Smart, Julianne Nicholson is a revelation.
Yep.
In Mare of Easttown. I was so happy that she was the one to win the Emmy and not Jean Smart, because I kept thinking Julianne Nicholson deserves it more. Julianne Nicholson, please give it to her. And since we mentioned Spider-Man at the top of it, keep your eyes open for the actress who plays Mare's daughter, because she's the girl who plays Betty Brant in the Spider-Man movies. See, look at that. Bring it all together there. So that's my number 8 choice. So let's go back to Dan with number 7.
Okay, speaking of Gene Smart, my number 7 is Hacks. You guys covered it pretty well. I just want to say that the casting Christopher McDonald as like an aging casino owner dude is like, he's just really good in the role, and both like a little bit of a depth to the character too, but just perfect as that kind of person. So it's a really good show. I like it and looking forward to watching it again.
Too. Yeah, he's excellent on. That's a great thing to point out. Kind of gets overlooked, but Smart and the actress whose name we all forgot, who plays the writing assistant.
All right. Okay, guys, my number 7 is going to be Reservation Dogs. We talked about it a little bit already, but I would like to add that just some of the stuff that I think is really great about this show. And by the way, Scott, it is, the technical term for it is comedy teen drama. That's how they labeled it. Just an FYI. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to talk about this is that it is the first show ever to feature all Indigenous writers, directors, and cast, and unsurprisingly is the first to film exclusively in Oklahoma. The only other thing I really have to add to it is one of the great feelings I have about this show is there's so many scenes where they're sitting in with community members, and that these are not really people acting. These are people just being themselves. And so it has a lot of the same feeling that like a show like The Trem has, where it kind of shows you what the heart of New Orleans is. This is kind of showing you the heart of the Indigenous nation in Oklahoma, and who these people are and what is important to them. And it's doing it in this really great way that kind of rides in the background, and there's no like really serious steep moments in the plot. You're living life with these people and you're learning what they're like. And I don't think that's a really easy thing to do successfully and keep viewers. So the fact that they were able to do this and create these storylines to go along with it, they were immediately set up for season 2. Like, it got signed like immediately. I am really excited to see where all of these cast members like go with their career. And it's just exciting to see this new world and storytelling finally like open up to the rest of the world.
Did a much better job of talking about that than I did. Nicely done.
We may hear more about that later.
Yeah, I figured you would, because by you bringing it up again, I realized, I'm thinking about all the things I really love about that show that I didn't even mention, and the one thing I hated. But I'm gonna wait. But it's a funny thing. But I'll wait till after. I know Brian's gonna talk about it, so I'll wait for that.
Oh yeah, my number 7 is the Amazon Prime original Underground Railroad.
Yes.
Which is, let me say, a heavy lift in that it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant to watch. It's hard to watch. But Barry Jenkins brought to the screen a very interesting narrative of traveling through the American South.
For sure.
And all the different ways that culture and slavery and the effects on people reverberate and create trauma. And it's pretty interesting. It even reflects on the damage that the slavery does to the people who impose slavery. But very, very beautifully dark, and by dark I mean macabre storytelling. The actress who plays Cora, who is just wonderful. I think her name is, I'm going to probably mess this up, Thuso Mbedu, plays Cora. But throughout the show, she's pursued by Joel Edgerton, who plays a bounty hunter. And they travel. There's various appearances by people in the different places they pass through, including Lily Rabe, was on an episode called North Carolina. So there are actors people will see, but the real triumph of the show is there's a whole lot of people you've never seen, actors you don't know, people who actually speak that you've never seen before. And in particularly, there's a young man who travels with Joel Edgerton, who's his sort of driver, who's a young black kid in a hat, great, who is just wonderful, who plays the part of Homer. It's, if you just want to chill, maybe not the thing you want to watch, but but it's worth the watch, and I think is an important piece of American film by Barry Jenkins.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's the one I was referring to earlier. I think I might have mentioned it.
I know.
I put it on for like 90 seconds, and it was like, but my problem is more often than not, when I start to watch something, it tends to be like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not a show.
Oh yeah, that is not a good. That's not a good time to start that one,
and
right?
I was just like, I can't. So anyway, so my number seven choice is going to be For All Mankind, season 2. One of the highlights of my recent Apple TV binge was finally checking out this show. I've heard about it, and for me, it just checks so many boxes. It's period, but not too period. This past season was set, in the early to mid 80s. I think it's all mostly like in 1983, whereas season 1 was 69 to the mid 70s. The entire series, for anyone who hasn't heard of it, it's predicated on kind of a what if scenario of, if the Russians had landed on the moon first, and how that singular event, the ripples, and how it changes and impacts history from that point on. And that's only exacerbated further in season 2, especially when it comes, and there's no other way to put this. And if you've seen season 2, you'll understand what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to the crazy shit that happens on the moon. It's just, I don't know. I don't even know how else to refer to it. I just really adored this series. And after what happens towards the very end, wow, I cannot wait to see what they have in store for season 3. I'm just so happy for Ronald D. Moore that he's finally involved with a really good series. No, I'm just kidding. But I kid. I love the BSG. But it's a dynamite show. And there it is, my number 7 choice.
All right, my number 6 is a show recommended, maybe not recommended directly to me by my attorney, but one show that one of my attorneys said was good and I should watch, and that's Reservation Dogs. It's just a really good show. I enjoy it, and just some interesting offbeat stuff going on. Like the spirit dude that the guys whatever sees sometimes, and stuff like that. But just really good, and I like the way the final episode of the season, how a lot of the stuff going on in the show came together really nicely, as well as the final episode of the season being really good in general. So just really good show. Looking forward to seeing what they do next year. Really good casting, just another one of those shows where like Dexter New Blood, where they managed to cast a bunch of young actors and none of them are fucking annoying. And I guess we're just we were ruined by the CW, just always casting somebody to just fucking suck. So it's nice. It's somehow they found a stable of actors that we haven't seen before that just pull it off and feel authentic, but just not annoying. So good job, and good job to my attorney. Matt Murdock, probably.
Excellent work, attorney. All right, so then we're going into my number 6, and my number 6 is ready, Dan. I'm going to blow your mind because I'm going to do this twice. It is Don't Look Up, made for Netflix. 2 movies, 1 list. All right. Okay. Anybody listening, anybody that's sitting in this conversation right now, if you don't know what it's about, I don't know where you've been, but it's basically it's about 2 scientists that realize there's an approaching comet that it would be Earth ending. If it hits Earth and it's gonna hit Earth, it is an Earth ending situation. So they get to do a media tour and try to convince the rest of the planet that they need to do something. Now, there's so much commentary and so much humor that is, to say it is a bit on the nose is an understatement. It is directly on the nose of what the world and specifically our country is doing to itself right now, in the lines of falling for conspiracies, gullibility, and not believing the truth when someone sees it. And the show is really funny. It is terrifying at the same time as being hilarious, at the same time being like so moving that it is just like, I cannot explain how moving certain moments of this are, especially in the midst of all the goofiness. But the real deal is anybody who doesn't like this movie is the butt of the joke. That's the only way I can describe it. Anyone who doesn't like it, it's there's a reason they don't like it. And it's not because the film isn't done well, and it's not because the actors aren't great, and it's not because the story isn't great. Everything's top notch. If you don't like it, there's a reason. That's all I have to say.
The reason is Jamie says you suck.
You suck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe they just don't like it because they don't need their metaphors to be that much on the nose. Just kind of like the previously mocked traffic stop between the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We don't always need our metaphors to be that. Sometimes we can. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say I've not watched them, but I do know people who do not really care for it, and I don't know if they quite fall into the category you're saying they would, Jamie, but I get what you're saying. I'll leave it at that because I haven't seen it.
Okay, my number 6 is, and I'll probably take shit for this, but Black Mass. I'm a sucker for that kind of story, and that kind of story, I'll leave it at that. But I appreciated the way that the scenario was treated in one of the more realistic ways, and not over the top. And I'm also a sucker for Hamish Linklater, and his performance as the priest, the town, the families. I found it particularly a entertaining show. I thought the meditations on aging, death, what that stuff might, or I'm sorry, Scott corrected me. I said Black Mass. That's probably because somebody mentioned it. It's Midnight Mass. Yes.
That
so I am going to take.
Why I'm just finding a Johnny Depp movie as I try to figure out what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I am going to take shit for it because I immediately stepped on my own intro. But I recommended this to a couple of horror fans, and it's done in a very, very how do I say this? It's produced very well. Yes. It's not hokey. I enjoyed the actors on it. It was cool seeing Zachary Guilford from Friday Night Lights in a role like this, sort of going back to his hometown and seeing what happens when the priest returns. So I really, really liked this and recommended it to a number of people, and so that's my number 6. So, and it is Midnight Mass. So go ahead and email the podcast that I'm the dumbass. I can take it.
Some people like to be priests. Some people like to be pirates. Who says you can't mix the two?
There you go. Now I feel bad that I didn't put Reservation Dogs higher since everyone else did. Right? But at least I got the name right. So anyway.
No.
Maybe it's not enough. Maybe it's not a top tier enough show. Anyway, so that joke will never die. My number 6 choice. Unlike y'all had it a bit lower on your list, I decided to put it at number 6. What We Do in the Shadows, season 3. Look, we didn't get a return of Jackie Daytona, so that made me sad. But we got an amazing trip to Atlantic City. I mean, that episode, wow. And speaking of reservation dogs, Nandor totally goes off the reservation in this season. Forget reservation, he's a revelation. And yeah, we sort of kind of lose Colin Robinson, but then not really. Look, the thing with this series, whether you think it's better or worse than the previous seasons, and I actually think I tend to agree a little bit more with Dan on this one. I probably like the second season a little bit more, but we're talking about degrees. This is the series I'm thrilled to get only once a week, because it would be over too soon for me, because it'd be like,
right.
It'll be a one night binge, then it's done, and then you have to wait a year. So I love that it gets parceled out to us, and because people rave about this show and they often just maybe focus on maybe one or two characters. I just want to give the entire cast love because they're all amazing in their own right. Kevin Novak, first of all, he has an amazing name to begin with. That's a great name. His work as Nandor has forever changed my speech patterns for the last few years. Natasha Demetriou, I think her name is. Nadja. You know what she is? She is the funniest female on TV right now. And including streaming.
I agree.
Find someone funnier. I can't think of him. She might be funnier than pretty much every guy, too. Harvey, Guillen, I think is how you pronounce it, who might be getting more FaceTime for people because he's in a current Geico commercial than the series. He's the heart of the series. He's always, has done an excellent job. Matt Berry, who we all love, and turns out to be the voice of something on a robot on Boba Fett right now. He's got that droll wit that shines through on this show, except he spends more time talking about masturbation than anything else, which I'm always going to appreciate that, of course. And look, Mark Prosh's Colin Robinson, I want there to be a video short that he could, maybe he and maybe a buddy can create where he has him meeting Price from Better Call Saul. I want that to happen. Make that happen. Anyway, it's the one show that no matter how funny the final episode is, and it always is, I'm also very sad because I'm like, oh man, I gotta wait another year. It's just, it's so good. I love the show so much. That's why y'all putting it at number 9. I flipped that number around, made it a 6. It's my number 6 choice on my list.
All right, my 5th favorite show of the year was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, season 30 or whatever the hell it was.
214th.
Yeah, so yeah, it was fun. It was good. It was really it was over too fast, unfortunately, but they did a really good job with what they did. And it was nice. I pretty much enjoyed everything they did. The COVID stuff was funny. Having Chief O'Brien show up was awesome. There's just a lot of good stuff to be said about that.
I'm so glad it made it on a list.
It was
a good one.
I was thinking about that. That's a great choice. And that flashback episode, the meta jokes the Seinfeld reference they make is brilliant on multiple levels. It made me go, this is why I love this show so much for the last 15 years.
It's such a funny reference.
It's
so funny.
It's brilliant. It's just, anyone who doesn't get why that's a great reference, I'm like, maybe you're not smart enough to be watching TV. Anyway, go on. Jamie.
All right. My number 5 is Midnight Mass. So, okay, we talked a lot about it. I see all of your points that you made, Scott. I had those too, but here's the deal. Like Brian, if Flanagan, if I hear that if Flanagan's making anything, I'm immediately interested. Immediately. I have rewatched this one and his other two this year. After watching this one, I went back and rewatched Bly and Hill Manor, or Hill House. One of the things that I love about him, and there's like, it's not like unique with him. Like there's lots of writers and directors that tend to use the same actors and actresses in their crew, but I always really have a good time seeing how one actor is, comes back in this other role that they're going to play. So that's sort of just a fun thing to always expect with his work. But the reason why this one made it up into my top 10 is, like Brian said, because of Hamish Linklater. Like his monologues, Flanagan, like all three films, right, are filled with monologues. There's always 3 or 4 pretty great, just like 5-minute monologues that wrap you in, but there is just something about the way that Hamish speaks, and it's just like this warm blanket wraps around you and like suffocates you. It's so strong, and it just takes over the screen, and it's sort of magical to watch when it happens. But yeah, that's why it made it on my list, and I'm sure that he makes another one, it'll be in my top 10 too. I just don't have any doubts.
All right. Midnight Mass Love.
Yeah.
My number 5 is going to be Only Murders in the Building. Greatly enjoyed this. As Scott, I think, said earlier in maybe a surprise, it sort of came out of nowhere. Selena Gomez, when I saw she was in it, I wasn't sure how she would stand up to Martin Short and Steve Martin, 2 legends. But really plays a great part. The story unfolds in a interesting way, and watching these two go through the paces. And oh, by the way, a pretty nice turn on the show by Amy Ryan, another one of the supporting MVPs that are in so many things. But really, really enjoyed the show. And sort of the meta joke of everything being a true crime podcast. But, my favorite thing in the show is, man, I just loved watching Martin Short have so much fun. It was infectious, and it was something that during a dark time felt really good, seeing these people doing what they did. And it did mix some drama in with the comedy, but clearly Martin Short and Steve Martin were having a good time, and it was really infectious. So I love this show.
Nice. Where are we up to number 5? Okay. But I gotta go back. Midnight. I really liked Midnight Mass, but I felt they could have had a few less monologues in it. It felt a little excessive to me. Just saying. All right. Anyway, no, I'll go back. And plus, what, they can't find shade? I'm sorry. Anyway, so number 5. I'm sorry, I can't get that. Just can't. Number 5.
They wanted to die.
Ugh.
They just need to talk to you.
They did not.
Shade thrower. They'd have been safe as can be.
Yeah, because I say things like
plenty of it.
I say things like they are. Anyway. She went to the last minute to try to bury herself in the sand. Fucking idiot. Anyway.
This week, The Way Things Are will be played by Scott's Opinions.
Apparently, no homes on an island have basements. Even. Oh no, you can't. You can't dig a cellar on an island. Anyway. My number 5 choice has been mentioned already. My number 5 is Invincible, the wonderful Amazon Prime animated series. Amazon Prime. These guys seem to be cornering the market on subversive superhero series between The Boys and Invincible. And I'm going to tell you something. When I was putting together this top 20 list, the way I kind of break it down, I start thinking, okay, these are going to be my top 5. These will probably be my top 10, 20, whatever. I will tell you right now, I was surprised that this show rose this high. But, especially because I'm someone, I confess, Mr. Taste, I also watch a lot of animated superhero crap, whatever. I think I've seen everything DC animated on HBO Max, except for the Lego stuff, whatever. And a lot of generically written crap or stuff written for younger viewers, whatever. And none of that applies to Invincible. It's just, there'll be moments where you think, oh, it's like everything else I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden you get hit with a line or a scene that you smile at, or it's got some resonant emotional or an inherent cleverness to it, or you get shocked by the plot, every other plot twist that you don't see coming. The vocal talent that they put together for the show is excellent. The heavy lifting from the people like, Stephen Ewan, J.K. Simmons, even when he's in a piece of crap, can still do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. Sandra Oh, who else is in this? Walton Goggins, Zachary Quinto.
Gillian Jacobs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, almost totally forgot about it. Right. Jason Mantzoukas, whatever. And even though this comes from Robert Kirkman, the creator of, Walking Dead, I already think they have a longer run of really excellent episodes of this than they have had of The Walking Dead. So I cannot wait for them to get to season 2. Unfortunately, I heard the other day they haven't even started writing it yet or something, so it's a ways off because animation takes fucking forever. But I'm looking forward to it when it does come back.
All right, so my fourth favorite show is a show that I watched and talked about with Scott before, but it's the Disney Plus show Loki. A show which I really can't think of a single thing to complain about that show, and just a wonderful show, extremely well cast all across the board, and just a hell of a lot of fun. We would have ranked higher if there weren't other things that I ended up liking more. If you're wondering why other shows were ranked above it, I like them more, but it's very, very close. These that's a good year for TV, and this show is just as good as any of the other ones, if not better. But yeah, I really hope they do more. Maybe they won't. Who knows? But either way, if they don't, I'm pretty pleased with what we got from Lotus. Very effective. What?
No, I know. I'm waiting for you to finish. I have something I want to say, but I want to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's all.
So let me get this just so we're clear. The shows that ranked higher than this are the shows you liked more.
Yes.
Okay. Because that's a very unusual tack to take when you're making a list of your favorite shows.
It's different, I know, but I am known for kind of thinking outside the box.
Oh man. Okay. Excellent. Jamie.
Okay, my number 4 is going to be Only Murders in the Building. I agree with all of the notions that have been placed out already. It is a good show when things are kind of cruddy. It's been it was a fun show to go to for comfort and just getting out of your own head. Martin Short, Steve Martin, awesome to see them just do what they do so well and get great laughs and a fun mystery. Selena Gomez was a delight, a surprise for all of us that we were like, hey, this works. And but I would like to add that one of the greatest things about this show was the music. The score was so great. It was perfect to the personalities of these two stars that these two guys together they take over the screen. So the fact that music came up and it started to get its own heartbeat in the show was really nice. And all the stuff with Sting was hilarious. So, but yeah, it was a solid show. I'm glad that we got something that was so entertaining this year.
Okay, my number 4 is Succession. I sometimes want to not like this show because, as Scott alluded to earlier, I believe, I don't know that there's a good person on this show. But damn, if their machinations and the dialogue and the things that happen aren't compelling, and the acting is just top notch. And I would bet that they probably thought Brian Cox would be dead by now, but he's just so damn good they can't kill him. And you've got him, Jeremy Strong, Sarah Snook, Kieran Culkin. What's the actress that plays Jerry? Gosh, I can't think of her name. But so much heartbreak, humor,
Jason F. Cameron.
Venom. Yes, that's it. I knew it was like a 3-name type thing. But this season in particular, Jeremy Strong really went deep with what his character had been going through. And so really enjoyed it. You got to love Tom and Greg, the ultimate comic sidekicks. Then you've got the Cameron and his and Willa and his wife and his ridiculous desire to be president, which on this show, who knows, he may be president. But really enjoyed this season. Really interesting twist at the end. If you want to watch bad people do funny things and get punished and still feel sorry for them, this is the show for you.
Interesting. So, once again, I'm simpatico with my longtime podcast partner because my number 4 choice is also going to be Loki. Actually, I would say one of the podcasting highlights of the year was having the chance to talk about this series. At least 4, maybe 5 of those podcasts were really good. Shooting's one sucked. Tom Hiddleston's Loki is easily one of the best characterizations from the entire MCU. So this was the one live-action MCU Disney Plus series offering when we heard about them like a year or two or whatever ago. This was the one I was actually excited about from the get-go because I was like, "Ooh, Loki." But this series, the second half of the season especially, those last 3 episodes, they're insanely good. And I love the fact that this little TV show, which, wow, we're getting another season. How is that happening? Will forever impact the MCU from this point on. I mean, well, like I said earlier, a lot of these shows I'm talking about, I keep mentioning, I can't wait for the next season. I really can't wait for the next season of this, whenever the hell they get around to it. And it's just so good. And the fact that, a number of these MCU shows turned out to be really good. WandaVision, Loki, Hawkeye, not so much, Sammy and the Snowman, and the What If cartoon will be charitable and say it was hit or miss. But this, whereas the other ones felt more like staging grounds for, well, not Hawkeye really, but they felt like staging grounds for later films, this held its own as like just a great series by itself. That last episode and what's the actor? Jonathan, is it Jonathan Davis wait, he has 3 names.
Major.
Jonathan Majors? Is that
Majors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. That should not have worked, but we talked about it way back when, but it worked beautifully. Great fun. And also, lastly, this show made me appreciate Owen Wilson, which hadn't been the case since he worked with Wes Anderson. I haven't liked him since those days, so it totally made me rethink. It had an effect on me for Owen Wilson the way Mr. Robot made me like Christian Slater after hating him for 20 years. So, top 3 time.
All right. So the third favorite show on my list is a show that I had no plans on watching and certainly no plans of enjoying, but it was Dexter New Blood. Now, it's definitely not the best show on the list, which is why it's 3 instead of 1 or 2. But honestly, it's a really good show. I mean, it's like Jamie said before, the casting was really well, and there's a really, really good exterior cinematography, school location shooting, and all sorts of stuff. But it ended up just being the kind of show where, like, and you can ask Jamie, I was popping out all sorts of outlandish theories for, and even though most of those theories didn't actually pan out, there was enough there, where it was able to get those juices flowing, or blood flowing, I guess, in this case. But I don't know if it's actually going to be a final season. I mean, it certainly potentially could be. But the app that I use to keep track of what episode of Cheers or Star Trek Deep Space Nine I'm watching has it listed as continuing instead of ended. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do more. But usually, if it's a show where they're definitely not going to do more, it would be categorized as differently. So while nothing else has been announced, it's certainly possible that they'll do some more, especially in light of the like massive ratings that Showtime
Right.
somehow managed to pull out of this thing. But yeah,
didn't it say that it's the best ratings that they've ever had on any show?
Yeah, and it did like the neat trick where like, it just got more rating or, higher ratings as the episodes went on, which doesn't happen too often nowadays. So yeah, just, not everybody is a fan of what happened in this season or series finale, depending on what ends up happening. But I was pretty satisfied with it, even if pretty much all of my very convoluted theories were not accurate. It was just a good show. But yeah. Dexter New Blood, I recommend it. Good stuff.
All right. Well, rounding out on my number 3 is going to be The Beatles Get Back documentary. What is there to say? You get to spend hours listening to the Beatles, like play out 14 new songs and mess around with, new songs. It's like we don't know them. But that's something that was really great, is getting to listen to, these little hints of a song. You go, I know what that is. I know what that's turning into. These really funny moments between these guys and these friends and these frenemies, and just really getting to see the process. All of that was great. All of that was fun and interesting, but for whatever purpose it was, it's like you sit down and go, I'm going to watch a little bit of this for a few minutes, and then I'm going to go do this other thing, and suddenly you're 3 hours in. It's mesmerizing. The fact that there was so many hours of footage to go through and put together and create some sort of format that gets us from point A to point B to point C in such a pleasing manner. I will definitely say Peter Jackson did a great job doing what he does, and I cannot imagine being somebody who likes the Beatles and not sitting down and investing their time in this, because it is well worth it.
Okay, my number 3 is What We Do in the Shadows season 3. I loved this season. I thought there were a couple of things that to this day kill me. Maybe the funniest thing that in all of the show is how Nandor dispatches of one of the werewolves in the episode Gale, where he's sneaking around to see his old girlfriend. And there's basically a shark jet fight between werewolves and vampires. And the way that he dispatches a werewolf from the roof is particularly hilarious. There's, Colin Robinson, who I think is, has sort of taken the place after Ron Swanson left the air of being the singular character that amuses me the most on any comedy. Colin Robinson is just always money. They kept the creepy doll around, which is a great, hilarious gag to fall in love with the cast and this show. And I absolutely love this season, and I hope they make 1 million seasons of this show. It's just wonderful.
Agreed. 1 million more, we'll take it.
Oh. I love we're at this stage where, without knowing what anyone else is going to pick, how we're all just basically trading off the same series at this point. That's the way these lists always seem to work out. Because my number 3 is the repeatedly mentioned Only Murders in the Building. Now, I did mention this a bit in my biggest surprise thing. So the one thing I left out there, I want to say that I was anticipating this series the moment I heard about it, but I'll be honest, when I first heard about it, it was like during some talk show conversation where Steve Martin and Martin Short were there. I thought they were kidding. I didn't think they were being serious. It sounded like they were just goofing on the idea of like a podcast or something. It was like, I don't know how many weeks later I realized, oh, this is like a real project they're doing. That they're not kidding. I knew it was going to be funny, but like I said before, I didn't know how much quiet sadness we would find in these characters that they would end up portraying. And like I mentioned before, who foresaw that Selena Gomez was going to be that good between two comedy legends like that. I love that Jamie, that you mentioned the music. Excellent to mention that. The thing I would mention on top of that as well, props to New York City for feeling it like as much of a character in this as any one performer. It felt more genuine, unlike some other things I've seen this year where it felt a little more contrived to me. Props to Sting for having a sense of humor. Amy Ryan for just showing up. Tina Fey for having some spare time to blend it. And by the way, Nathan Lane. Let's not forget how great Nathan Lane is on this series. I was over the moon about this show. And again, it's also one of those things I know in this day and age, people have gotten used to the whole, and it's more of a Netflix phenomenon because everyone else seems to do it piecemeal, the whole binge a season thing. Again, I'm glad I had to wait week after week. Because this was a show you wanted to talk about with people. You wanted to talk about the mystery element of it, or you wanted to talk about the episode where it's all the perspective of the deaf character, and like, wow, that was that kind of a thing. Excellent show, hence why it made my top 3.
Yeah.
All right. So now for my number 2 show. It's a show that some of you have discussed so far, but it's the Disney Plus series Hawkeye, which I was not planning on really. Actually, I forgot that they're making a Hawkeye series after all those other ones came out until somebody dropped the trailer for it. But when I saw the first trailer for it, it looked like something I'd be into. I mean, just, I kind of like that, schlocky Christmas shtick that like so many things like to lean on during the holidays. But this show managed to lean on it that really well, as well as just being good in general. I would say that the opening few minutes of it are maybe the best opening to me of any comic show or movie. Just so, even though I'm not a fan of the first Avengers movie really that much, that's where the scene takes place. Just, it's so unbelievably effective. I mean, just for whatever reason, they just did it perfectly. Just an absolute magnificent way to like introduce his character and like, show her motivations and just, a way that fits in their world, but also just kind of fits with this kind of like, story type thing. But just such a good show. I mean, with, good bad guys and, funny bad guys, even if they're dumb and interesting, cool, goofy little arrow things that would literally make me laugh out loud. LOL. That means laugh out loud, literally. But just, yeah. Or just a really good show. I mean, we discussed it on our the last podcast I did with you, I think, Scott. But so I don't really need to go into too much more detail about it. But I mean, if you like the superhero type stuff and haven't seen it yet, just watch it. It's good. It's really good.
Okay. So I am going to move into my number 2, and my number 2 is Bo Burnham's Inside. Okay, so Brian touched on some of this. Here's the thing. I have been a fan of Bo's for many years, all the way back to his 17-year-old diarrhea song. like a stupid song. I can't help it. But all of the songs in this are great. He's a great songwriter. He really is a great songwriter. But there's something that happens in this particular show, because he's had a few other specials. He does one man shows on stage, but a few things have developed for him over the last couple of years that really shifted something in him, and it is very strange and interesting to watch it happen. One, he started to have massive panic attacks, being in crowds, being on the stage, somebody who seemingly was built to be on the stage. Like, everything about this kid is showy. And he stopped being able to manage his heart rate and his feelings on stage. And so he started to become a little bit more closed in, on his own due to his anxiety. But in this show, we have specific part where he's counting down like the last minute before he turns 30. And I really like that moment. I think is so interesting to watch because it's not something we really think about consciously, but there's so much changing that happens somewhere right around 30, like a maturity level that usually comes in, and it's something about the world looks at you differently. It might not, you might be the same jackass you were at 25 at 30, but the world looks at someone who's 30 differently. And for somebody who was so successful at 16, 17 years old, had like world-renowned comedians talking to him, being part of this inner circle. Here's this crazy 17-year-old kid. Look what he can do. And everything that he's done up until this series was based about this young kid doing this thing that adults can't even do. And suddenly that's done. And he is the adult, and he is in that world. And that thing that set him aside, he has to stop and realize is that gift really what I'm doing, or was that a fluke because of my age? And just facing the consequences of the stupid songs and the dumb things that he said in his youth. All of this happening while he's forced alone inside in a pandemic, and it was just opening this world into what so many people are going through, and young people specifically in his age group that have just had one world-changing event after another happen, and stepping into those really, really adult shoes where the world no longer gives you any excuses, and what that means for him as a person and a creator. I can't imagine understanding anyone who doesn't get moved at some point in this. But he is he's always been interesting, funny, but he's always been very interesting in the sense that he can take ridiculous notions, throw them out front, get you to laugh at them without realizing at first he's behind those ridiculous notions, making fun of them. And then when you realize that he's making fun of them, you get to see that he skirts right up to genius, and he's always interesting to watch. That's it. That's my number 2.
I co-sign that 100%, and I will say the two interesting things that in this special, he basically makes fun of Jeffrey Bezos twice about taking over the world, and of course during the pandemic, Amazon got even richer. And now
Right.
Jeffrey Bezos is apparently jacked on a yacht with, his new hottie or whatever. So a lot of great social commentary but some really good heartfelt stuff and some really earnest attempts to make art in a room, which is incredibly difficult and amazing. I showed this to my brother, who's not particular, and my brother was trying to go, how's he do this? My brother's a computer whiz, and he was like, how did he edit this and do it? Like, my brother watched it from a technical standpoint, said this is amazing. But it's amazing in all facets. So I 100% sign off on that.
Absolutely. And I kind of see him as, the mask, like the comedy and drama masks, like he's the physical embodiment of that idea.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean it in the truest sense, not just like as a generic form. Like he is somebody who can come across as just shallow and goofy, but if you give him 5 minutes, he's deep in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And he can shine in either direction.
I mean, that thing was deep as hell.
Yes, absolutely.
So my number 2 is Get Back, and I'm going to cheat and also just make number 2 the Beatles, and also add the Hulu series McCartney 321, which was Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney discussing Paul going over some of their tracks. I mean, this was a banner year for Beatles content, and I'll address mainly the musician in me loved the 321, but just the human in me for Get Back I mean, what I observed was that watching that is you see there were four sides to the story. There was never one story. There was never one narrative. That Yoko Ono is rehabilitated in some sense.
Yes.
That you see clearly. I read this, so this isn't my own saying, but someone said, that you see at some point really the fifth Beatle was heroin. That sometimes you see John not 100%, but then you see laughter and spark, and you see the old friends come back. You see both the willingness to support the vision of other people by George, but then George bristling that people don't support him. And I actually, this and my number one both moved me to tears. And I actually got teary-eyed watching Ringo and watching George help Ringo go over and help him write his song at the piano. And, Ringo being apparently the greatest person in the world.
Oh my God, right?
He's so good, and
he is the best supporting character, and he should be the main. He was there for them like 100% every time someone was writing something. Here's Ringo just sitting, listening, following.
He was
through.
The rock, and you see that he was the rock of these guys. He didn't contribute to the drama. He didn't get in the middle of it, but when they started playing, he started playing. You see him hand a stick of gum to Yoko. And you see Paul both becoming a leader, not loving it, but then at times wielding that in a way that causes hurt feelings. My favorite thing was basically watching all of them tell that annoying director to fuck off when he keeps coming up with stupid ideas. I mean, it was almost like a Monty Python skit. Like, we're going to get on boats and we're going to go this. And George would go, no. But really getting this beautiful footage and getting to go inside this story and feel like these people we love, like that it was complicated, and it helps us know that even though they were breaking up, they still cared about each other, and they were there making something and working at it and dedicated to it. And I mean, Peter Jackson's made some stuff that's really long that didn't need to be that long. This was really long, and you could have given me 20 more hours of it. And it was wonderful, fascinating. And for musicians, for people who love the Beatles, for people who want to set the record straight on history, Get Back just frickin' rocked my world.
Yeah, and it was really fun getting to watch the friendship jabs at each other, when George got that slide guitar out, and John's like, and if you get good at this, we'll get you a nicer one.
Right. And let me say also really getting to see Billy Preston's contribution to it, yes. That how much they respected him and how much he added to the songs with his piano. So, I mean, just freaking phenomenal.
Oh, okay. We are rocking at probably 2 hours, 35, 36, whatever. Well, I loved everything you guys just said because you're making it really easy for me. Because guess what my number 2 choice is?
Get Back.
Of course. Come on. I mean, look, the only reason it's not number 1, I personally felt it would be a little bit too much of a nod to my own personal bias. If anyone knows me reasonably well, I'm a rather big time Beatles fan. Yeah, you've covered, you've both covered it so well. Thank you. This is what you call, you guys have done the heavy lifting, so I don't say the goddamn thing right now. I'll just say it's an extraordinary thing to watch, and the bigger a Beatle fan you are, the more wow-inducing this whole piece turns out to be. Just the way it both confirms some things we knew, but it also dispels a number of really cliched and rather obtuse opinions and views that many have had about the Beatles, about Yoko Ono, about all of it. There are things that, that even though this is a historical document, a record, it's amazing how there are moments that bring sheer joy, and there are things that just make you really sad. A number of times during this series. And it's also, even if you've seen all the clips and the interviews over that time period, and the movies and different appearances, there is something about spending, and we spend like 7 hours or so, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with them, which it makes them more human for us. We've never had an opportunity like this. And there's nothing more fascinating than watching them trying to craft a song. And we all know what the song is. And you can't help yourself. It's like yelling at someone in a horror movie. You're yelling, it's like, Martin, the name is Martin, just like George Martin. How are you not thinking the name Martin? Look in the booth. That's the name, Martin, not Marsh Martin. You know, but it's, it's just wow. Again, Brian, you just, I mean, you nailed it, and then drilled it, and then nailed it some more there. So there's nothing really more I need to say about it. It's, like I said, it's astounding. It's an astounding achievement. And knowing that there was 58 hours or something like that, or 59 hours, I'm like, you could have released like a few hours every few months, and I'd watch the fuck out of this.
Oh my God. I think probably one of the most interesting things documentaries do is they bring clarity to subjects if done in the right way. And I would be shocked if anyone hated one of the Beatles or someone and watched this and came away hating them more instead of hating them less. I mean, right. Human beings are irrational, but whoever you blame, whatever side you're on, when you see it and you see how complex it is, you see the good in all of them.
Yes.
And this really brings, and you see what brought them together and their friendship, their joy. And you see moments where it's like you just want to capture the screen and be like, jump in a time travel device and go back and go, see, you guys love each other. Like, you really do. Like, don't break up. And but it's sad, sort of, you know where it's headed, but damn, it's just beautiful and really touching, and seeing the love and care and craft, and it just freaking was amazing.
And it actually reminds me of something that this is going to be a weird tangent, and then I'll get to everybody's number one. I had mentioned, I think my number 7 choice was For All Mankind, season 2, right?
Yep.
One of the ripples, and I don't feel this is a big spoiler if you guys haven't seen it, and if you guys want to regard it that way, I apologize in advance, but I don't care. One of the odd things that changes through history, Lennon doesn't die. So through various news reports throughout season 2 and season 1, but really more season 2, John Lennon is an existing character, and commenting on what's going on in the world, like with Ronald Reagan and stuff like that. Which I remember thinking that's just a fascinating choice they made there. Why the ripples went to that extent, who knows? I just realized I hadn't mentioned that. When we were talking about John Lennon, I was like, oh, I should mention that here. Okay. All right. So we're gonna each unveil our number 1 choice. I would also say for you guys, if you want to, I can't think. Do you guys want to mention if you have like a few honorable mentions after that, or do you just want to do it all at the end?
Do it at the end.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So, Dan, why don't you kick off with your number 1 choice?
All right. Now, people who've been listening to me talk tonight would definitely know that I'm a comic book fan, so they probably would not be surprised if I picked WandaVision for my number 1 show. But I didn't, because it wasn't my favorite show this year. And surprisingly, I ended up picking a show that I only watched because I was intrigued by the ads I saw as I rewatched Cheers and Frasier on Hulu, and that was Only Murders in the Building. So sometimes I get information from ads like hey, Lawrence Fishburne skipping in the Matrix movie to be in this MacGruber TV series, and he didn't make a bad decision there because the Matrix movie fucking sucked. So, but this is a case where the advertising looked interesting, and I decided to give it a shot, even though I don't know anything about Selena Gomez, and figured like, okay, whatever, She sounds like she's got like marshmallow syrup in her mouth when she talks, but maybe she'll be okay. But honestly, just a really, really good show. And you guys all covered it, fairly well and stuff, but just, it was the only show that I watched this year that when I was done watching it, I kind of wanted to watch it again, not to look for things that I missed or clues about the mystery or whatever. I just enjoyed watching it. The entire like atmosphere around it was just stellar, and it pretty much came out of nowhere and ended up being something that, I wasn't expecting. So good job, people who made that show. And good job, Hulu, for advertising it effectively.
Well done on everybody's part. Okay, my number one for the year of 2021 is going to be Underground Railroad. Okay, Brian, it was on your list. You spoke a little bit about it. Here's the thing. I see a lot of people who went, you know what? I tried to watch the first episode and I couldn't do it. I tried to watch the first 1 or 2 episodes and I couldn't do it. Not knowing anything about the show itself, the novel that it was based off of, any of that. And to all of those people, I just want to be like, you have no idea where this is going. It is not what you think it is. On one part, it is. But it's not what you think it is. So I just put together a very short little explanation because I really want more people to watch this show because I so badly want more things done like this show was done. Okay, so the story, like I said, is based off of a novel. It's a fictional story about a woman named Clara who is trying to escape from slavery in the South, but you will find that the Underground Railroad in this story is an actual railroad system, like with an actual train and engineers and like a railroad system. And Cora's journey to escape sort of plays out a little bit like a game where each level, like each stop that she ends up on, the stakes get higher, the peril is greater, the journey gets stranger and stranger until she kind of has to face like an ultimate boss, which is the slave catcher who you were speaking of, who the thing is with this slave catcher is that this slave catcher has a perfect record and has never not caught who he was hunting, with the exception of one person who happens to be Cora's mother, who ran when she was a child. So there is everything that you said beautifully, Brian, where it's such a reflection on the trauma that this slavery causes, even to those who own slaves. It is not easy watching, especially the first 4 episodes are just ouch. But it's so weird because on one hand it is so honest, but then suddenly there's this weird magic, psychological magic that starts happening within the show. And since you were somebody who's watched it, I'll just talk about there's a part where there's no spoiler to this at all really, but there's a part where every single person on screen goes still.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone goes still. And it's not like there's 2 or 3 people on screen. There's a shit ton of people on screen. And everyone goes still and stops what they're doing and just makes contact with the camera. And to say that it gave me goosebumps is it's just the peak of what it did. It fucking changed something in the way that I view how things are made. I don't know. There's something so deeply psychological about this series. So when someone says I couldn't get into it because it's so heavy, it's so this, it is absolutely. But I think a lot of people skipped it because they saw that maybe it was just another show that was almost treated like torture porn. Because
it's not.
And it's not. It is not. It starts out feeling that way because the reality of the situation is so grotesque. However, it changes into something you never would see coming. It gets so freaking weird, but so beautiful. And I don't know, whenever someone says, it's on my list, I want to grab them and be like, you need to watch this right now. Because it is just something else. So it is my number one. And I didn't even have to think about it. When I wrote out this list, like I literally wrote number one. This was number one. I knew it was number one for me while I was watching it. So there you go. That's that.
That was beautiful, Jamie.
Thank you.
My number one is Reservation Dogs. I know you're all waiting. This show also moved me to see real people on a real reservation. Sterling Harjo, the creator, along with Taika Waititi. Q Scott, dirty mind joke there. But this show, was authentic. It was made with authentic slang and told, a small story of a group of friends affected by a tragedy. And there is a particular episode that affected me so much that I couldn't sleep, and that was the episode The Hunt. Mm-hmm. And the young actors playing all the parts were phenomenal. But the episode in The Hunt of remembering her friend, it just to this day, that episode haunts me, but is also beautiful. The love for her family, all the characters, the group, Cheese and Bear and all of them, and the lawman who rides around, but then goes, the people in town make fun of, but when he catches great guest stars, you had Wes Studi in a wonderful guest starring role. You had Bill Burr as the driving teacher.
That was so funny.
Yeah, takes his students to go confront somebody. I mean, you had Kirk Fox as the sort of junkyard dealer. You had Bobby Lee as the doctor at the clinic, and and all the wonderful Native Americans they cast, and the people just in the reservation that appeared on screen. I'd never seen anything like this. And the reality, I think we've seen so many experiences captured, this being an actual Native American experience put on to see these young kids. And I just thought it was remarkable. It moved me. As you all have said, I have proselytized to anyone that will listen about this show. And I want to give a big shout out. I think we all are fans of the network FX.
Yes.
But with what FX has done with this, with Atlanta, they've given some voices to make some of the most compelling television of our time. And Reservation Dogs is my favorite thing I saw this year. And I hope that a bunch of people watch it, and I hope it comes back and continues to shine, because nothing affected me, moved me, entertained me, and was interesting. I had me looking up slang. What does Studis mean? What does Scotin mean? And, I just thought it was out freaking standing.
And don't forget about Uncle,
Yeah, Uncle.
who's my favorite.
Fry bread. I mean, so much cool stuff in showing this world. And the sad thing of, and I relate to it being an Appalachian, that, the desire of so many young people is to get out.
Right.
Like, I want to go somewhere else because where I live's not the best. But seeing your family and the people you love, and I can't say enough good things about it. My favorite thing of the year.
Yay!
Listen to Sterling Harjo's interview on Mark Maron's podcast.
I did
Okay.
listen to it.
Yeah,
I thought it was great.
That was a good one. So
Yeah.
yes, good show. Maybe it doesn't show the Indian Native American experience quite as well as Longmire did, but it's still, good. Longmire actually did a decent job with that. All obnoxious Longmire jokes aside. Yes, good call.
Yeah. I'm not going to feel bad that I put it far down on my list because it still made my list, so that's good. If they had given Bill Burr a different hairpiece, I might have put it higher on my list. But the moment he took off the hat and I saw what they did to him, it just freaked me out. I couldn't even. I had to look away from. I couldn't watch the screen anymore. I was like, I had to look away.
It was like, it's like looking in a mirror for you. I can see why that freaked you out.
Oh, wow.
So this is your last time on the podcast now, right? And that I don't joke when I say that. All right. So, dumbass. Where are we? Oh, we're at number one. My number one choice. Oh, and since we're all going to be at, and Jamie, thanks for the uplifting choice for your number one choice.
You bet.
I knew that was your number one from the get-go.
Anyone who knows me knows that.
I know. You're a happy-go-lucky person.
You bet.
So, in a similar vein, my number one choice is going to be season 3 of Succession. Basically, if you're not Brian and you're someone else who watched Succession this past season, straight through to the end of season 3, it's unlikely you're going to be ranking anything really over it in any top 10 or 20 for the year. It's a series that is audacious and smart as fuck. It doesn't underestimate the audience's intelligence. If there was a better written show last year, you know what? I sure as hell didn't see it. If there's a series that has a bigger and better overall ensemble, I haven't heard of it. I would go as far as to say that this series has gotten exponentially better from season to season. And beyond all that, the fact that they have all these characters, and maybe the show's infamous for it, that, let's face it, when you start watching the show, you initially do not like these people. There might be one sort of schmucky dude you sort of might like to root for, but then you realize, I don't want to root for him. I'm not that enthusiastic about that. But you know what? You get wrapped up in the story and the smartness of the dialogue and how the parts all come together. And the deeper you dive, episode by episode, the more you become drawn to a number of characters, because you know what? They are so damn compelling. They're cleverly written, and let's face it, they're portrayed by some of the best acting we've seen in some time. These characters that you felt that way about the start, that you would never have any sympathy or empathy or any sort of charitable feelings about, when you witness their journeys over the last couple of seasons, especially when we power through the 3rd season, not only do you care, you are emotionally invested. And what happens by the time you get to that finale, and that finale, wow, when that finale reaches its conclusion, it goes beyond being satisfying. It leaves you feeling gutted and exhilarated all at once. It's the exceedingly rare series that you feel you have to talk about both before and after every episode. It would have been, quite frankly, it would have been the perfect series for podcasting if I had watched it when it was actually being airing, whatever. But I know there's already a number of reportedly really good pods out there on this series. I'm just happy I finally get a chance to talk about it here. Brian mentioned a number of the actors on the show. The stuff that Jeremy Strong has done over the last 2 years, and I hear he's like super method, so to the point of maybe being annoying about it. But when you see what he does And this is a guy that they throw it in your face the very first episode of the series, like, this is an asshole you're not going to like at all. And then when you see what he goes through for the last few seasons, you're like, your heart breaks for this guy. The fact, Brian, you mentioned a number of actors. One other actor's name that deserves mention. You mentioned the character, Matthew McFadden, who plays Tom. Yep. The fact that this is a character who for much of the series has been the butt of jokes, or been this, this total friend yet bastard to Greg, whatever. But he does such an amazing job throughout the third season. Actually, from the end of the second season on, because we got to go back to the wedding with Shiv, and what happens there, and how that carries throughout the third season. And you understand him, and you actually, you feel for him, and you never thought you could feel anything for that character other than, oh, what a fucking asshole. You mentioned we were struggling for her name before. J. Smith Cameron. Dan, you and I know her. We know her from Rectify.
Yep.
Boy, is this a switch from Rectify for her. Good for her. Not getting typecast in any way, shape, or form in this series. It's an astounding achievement. I hate the fact I didn't watch this when it first aired, because I didn't start watching season 1 until I think either end of August or early September. Basically, me and my friends, we were watching one episode a week. We were watching season 2 while everyone else in the country who watched the show was watching season 3. I basically watched season 3 in like the last week and a half of the year, and once before I even got to that last episode, I was like, oh, there's no question what my favorite series of the year is. And then we got that last episode, and this is where I'm going to do a little, sorry, I know I didn't say we were going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. As far as sometimes when we would do these best of the years, we would do what we thought the best episodes of television were that year. If you will indulge me, I'm going to do quickly, see if I can do it like in 90 seconds or so. And it's all shows that we've all mentioned, or I've mentioned, you guys have mentioned, whatever. My number 5 choice, I'm cheating right off the bat. Episodes 4 and 5 of Loki, the Nexus event, and Journey into Mystery. I think me and Dan, we loved those episodes. They were just so brilliantly conceived and so much fun, and and the finale was great. Don't get me wrong, but it's those 2 episodes that really stand out for Loki, and it's number 5 on my list. Number 4 was the season 2 finale of For All Mankind. I don't think you guys have seen it, so it's just bonkers, crazy, but awesome. Number 3, Squid Game episode 6, the one with the marbles. It's the one you're going to keep coming back to when you watch Squid Game. It's just like, wow. Number 2 is the one I wish you all could have seen. And if you ever do get a chance to, if you haven't watched the show yet, when you do watch it, when you get your Apple TV and you check out Mythic Quest, go to remember to look for episode 6 called Backstory. It's an astounding piece of television, and the next episode actually follows it up pretty well too, but it is what the title says. It's basically a backstory for a character you were not expecting. It's done totally as a dramatic piece, not done as a comedy. It's about, wannabe sci-fi writers in the early 70s. It's just amazing. And number 1, the finale of Succession. All the bells say. The last 15 minutes of that episode, or last 10, whatever, 15 minutes, yeah. Specifically with the 3 siblings. I don't think I've seen a better scene in the last 3 years of television than that scene. That gutted me the way that scene has. And I'm putting it up right up there with the other shows that we love, like your Better Call Sauls and everything else. That scene was like, oh my God. And the way it's written, the way it's performed, the way it's staged. If you've watched the series, go back and watch how they staged that scene. It's brilliant the way they move these three characters around this space. It's so, it's something. We've talked about a few things on this podcast being a work of art. That specific scene there is a work of art. And that's why it's my, my number one episode and number one series of the year.
Yay.
And that's all I have to say about that.
And that's all I have to say about that.
So
Number one.
everybody out there but Brian who's watched it, enjoy that.
Well, I was planning to say everybody, and then you went and put it number 4. I didn't know you watched it at all. And they're like, well, now I'm gonna have to mention Brian now. I said if it had been a top tier show. Anyway,
it is a top tier show.
Damn straight, it's a top tier show.
Yeah, God. Hey, I'll just say, and I sort of alluded to it, my best episodes, Reservation Dogs and Gale, What We Do in Shadows, every episode to Get Back.
There you go. That's good. Those are good choices. I don't know what my favorite episodes would be. I don't remember the names.
So we did a good job, gang.
Yeah. Now, did you guys just want to give a shout out to any of the quote unquote honorable mentions, which are basically the shows that didn't make your list?
I want to say that I really want to see a couple of the shows on the list that I don't have Apple TV and I don't have Paramount, and I want to see For All Mankind. I want to see Mythic Quest. For the very reason that you've laid out, Scott, and that is Danny Pudi being basically the opposite of Abed, and Ronald D. Moore's involvement in For All Mankind. I want to see those. I loved Evil Season 1, and I think you and I talked about that when that came on. But I don't have Paramount for Season 2, so I want to see that. But I will give a shout out. I was kind of hesitant to put 3 Marvel shows in, and I don't know why Loki suffered in my final. Loki was wonderful, and you guys rank it higher than I did. For me, Hawkeye and what WandaVision did maybe by coming first affected me in a different way. But I definitely want to give a shout out to Loki. On a different day, it might have been on the list somewhere. I thought it was a great show. Hiddleston inhabits that role in a way that's just delicious. So I definitely want to give that a shout out.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, the shout outs that I have, you know what? I don't have a whole lot because a lot of what I watched was pretty much what I watched. There's a couple that aren't on the list, but Witcher Season 2, I will say I liked so much more than the first season. It was a good time, easy to watch. And I suppose I'll give a shout out to Handmaid's Tale, even though this last season was kind of for me in comparison to some of the work that's happened. But I was still really looked forward to it when it was on, and I will look forward to the next season. So that's about it.
Oh, I have a shout out I forgot to give, Scott. The latest season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. While not on my list, really enjoyable, and a whole lot of Tracy Ullman for the first time in a long time in a very featured role on the show. I think with everything going through it, it didn't make my list this year, but I still enjoyed it, loved watching it. And if you like Tracy Ullman, she's in a lot of it, and it's a good season.
I guess I can mention I also enjoyed the TV shows Black Widow and Spider-Man No Way Home. They were good.
All right. What do you guys have anything that you're looking forward to? Like what's upcoming that you guys are excited about?
I didn't give my honorable mentions, man.
Oh, fine. You do it. You don't get to rule this show anymore. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Wow.
Sorry for stepping on you.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I got better reviews for my solo ones than anyone's but you people, so I would shut the fuck up if I were you. Anyway, you guys have mentioned a few of them already. Curb Your Enthusiasm, absolutely. I mean, the best bad acting that we've ever seen.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Brian, you let off your list with Cobra Kai season 3, so it's only appropriate at the end of the podcast I give a shout out to Cobra Kai season 4. Although I watched most of it on New Year's Day, but I did start it on New Year's Eve. Schmigadoon, which is also on Apple TV, which is an odd little artifact there with Cicely Strong and Keenan. I always screw up his name. The Key of Key and Peele.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it,
Keegan. I forget the
Keegan
name.
Michael Key.
Thank you. Right. If, as I mentioned on that last podcast I did, if you have any appreciation for musicals, you should check it out. Sweet Tooth was a series I really enjoyed, and I would just tell people who maybe when they first start, they're like, I was like, give it a little time. Yep. It becomes more fun and more fun to watch as it goes on. You gotta get past. Someone else was like, really? They were like iffy on the first two. It's like, no, give it a little bit more time. Trust me. And by the time you finished with it anyway. I already mentioned Superman and Lois in my surprises, so that would be there. Just the way they did the shade on Stargirl season 2 is the only reason I'm gonna give that a shout out. I actually did enjoy it though. Jamie, you mentioned Handmaid's Tale season 4. I feel the same way. It was one of those. I liked it enough,
right?
But it
didn't hit with the power that it had been hitting previously.
Although I would have to say, I think I kind of felt that way to a certain extent about the previous season as well. Again, right. It's like I like it, but it didn't go. Our running. That's one of those shows I watch on Sundays with my best friend and stuff. And we always talk about it's like it's not. I mean, it may not be the Underground Railroad, but it's such a happy show. it's like why do we want to get depressed every Sunday? Why are we watching this?
It's just the thing to do on a Sunday. So
to reverse the depression, I would also want to just the last two Lock and Key season 2. I almost forgot about that, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and I was
watch that with the kids. But I've got to say, these people on that show have a real issue with holding on to something in their hands. Holy crap! Everybody dropped crap left and right.
Okay, and finally, I want to mention this show because even if I don't know if it quite worked all the time or even most of the time, I want to give them credit for trying something different, and I am intrigued enough, especially what happened in the final episode, to see what they do in their second season. That's very intriguing to me, and I'm going to say the title the way I think it should be said, and I'm talking about Kevin Can Fuck Himself on AMC. I'm curious to see where they go with that, especially with a mildly shock. I expected, yet was still shocked by the final episode, so I'm kind of curious where they're going to go with that show from this point on.
Yeah, I haven't caught it.
It's really that seems like a show that would really be up your alley. I'm surprised by that.
The title really signifies that it would catch my attention.
Yeah,
but I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, and these people seem like they're like like from your neck of the woods, so.
Well, if they're from my neck of the woods, then I probably don't really want to watch.
No, but you get to hate them, so it works. So.
That's true.
Okay, so what were you saying when you tried to take over the podcast before?
Oh yeah, when I started to drive this ship right into the ground. No, I was just wondering if anybody had anything on their list that they're looking forward to, like stuff that they've seen, like obviously The Crown. I know we all watch it, but is there anything else that is you're getting excited? We got a lot of stuff coming out in January and February.
Oh, did either of you two gentlemen have anything in mind before I say anything here?
Just Better Call Saul, man.
For sure, yeah. That's definitely there.
Yeah, I don't know about something that's coming out that soon, other than Ozark is coming within the next week or so.
10 days, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And
yep.
Hey, Brian, maybe it'll rise up the tier level for you this time.
It
Yeah,
might.
get that
It could.
tier.
It could
Get
happen.
that tier to
That-
come up.
I heard Jason Bateman bring that up in an interview recently. It's like, we're just trying to get that one, that lawyer guy. Anyway, and speaking of lawyer guys, obviously
Afterlife final season is coming out this week.
I think so.
This week, I think.
Yeah.
That one's coming out.
That's right. That's coming out pretty soon. Seems like everything I'm looking forward to is either coming out later in the year or I have no idea when it's coming out.
It's a mystery.
Like you just let us know that you think you heard The Boys is coming back in like early June, which would be excited about. Better Call Saul is going to be sometime in the second quarter, so that hopefully that means April and not later than that. I keep seeing the ads for HBO and HBO Max and all their upcoming programming this year. So I was like, "Ooh, Barry's finally coming back." I'm excited about that because I really adored that show.
Hell yeah!
And with all the different things they have, I mean, I know there are people who are going to get excited about the Game of Thrones related show, and it might be good. I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other.
I check it out, but I'm not.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out.
Like,
of course,
super pumped.
That White House plumbers thing, though, that I really want to watch. Did you notice that in the ads? They're doing the whole thing with the Watergate and the G Court, and they're like, "There's Justin Theroux, there's Woody Harrelson." It's like, okay, I'm already sold.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a bunch of things I'm forgetting, or there's probably some MCU crap coming this year that will, probably She-Hulk or something like that, which we're all gonna watch. Come on. So.
Of course. Now I saw something that I should have mentioned. I think I could be wrong. I mean, hell, I've already fucked up a title, so why not? Let's shoot the moon.
Oh boy.
Yay, boo. I think I saw that Noah Hawley is doing like an Aliens television show.
Yes.
That'd be interesting.
Is that coming out this year, though? It might be. I have no idea.
I don't know when it is, but I saw the news and I noticed he hadn't done anything in a while, and I wondered, and apparently that's what he's been working on. So
I'm just afraid because it could be. I remember Prometheus, so I don't trust anything with alien involved. So.
There's a show coming out on Showtime that I don't know if you guys have seen the ads for this, that I am actually really intrigued about. It's W. Kamau Bell is going to be doing a docu-series called or about Bill Cosby. Like, what do we do with Bill Cosby? I don't know if you watch Kamel's show on CNN. If you ever watch his show, it's so great. He's so great at interviewing and he's a comedian, but he's really good at getting people to just like talk one-on-one without it feeling like an interview and really getting the lay of the land. So him doing this is like, it's the best person that could possibly be doing this docu-series. So I'm really excited about it. I mean, it's not going to be like, it's going to be a lot of shit that's going to be, kind of hard to deal with, I think, a little bit, but it's so interesting because it's like, what do we do with this guy who was, for the better part of our community, a father figure? How do we handle this as a community? How do we handle this? So I'm pretty pumped about it. It looks good.
I'm looking forward to the next show done by the people that made Dark, 1899, which will show up at some point on Netflix.
That's right. I forgot all about that. Good call. Ooh, maybe we can put that on the tentative possibly podcast thing then.
Yeah, we had a fun time with Dark, so I imagine that they probably, unless they totally drop the ball or it just ends up being lame, which I don't think it seems to be. But I guess we'll see.
All right.
Very interesting.
You boys did pretty good on that Dark podcast.
Did good with all that time turning and backward forwards.
Yeah. Some of them.
Thank you.
It's too much fucking work. That's the problem with that show. It's like, oh my god. It's like maybe we need to be a Patreon thing because it's not worth it. All right. I'm gonna say that's it. So, guess what? For you people out there, if you enjoyed this podcast, that's right. I'm at that point because it's. Good Lord, it's 3 hours and 17 minutes into this.
David, I'm glad you had a good work day hanging out with us.
Got and Kimber both just creamed their jeans. Anyway, if you enjoyed hanging out with this podcast, guess what? You'll enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page even more. It's the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like it, and you can join the conversation about any of the shows we talked about here, or pretty much anything else, even movies, which are also on this list, because I said they could be. You can find our podcast. If you're already listening to the podcast, I don't know why I have to tell you where you can find our podcast. It doesn't really make a lot of sense because you're already... Anyway, you can find us everywhere like Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music and I don't know where else. But basically, you should really go to stvdpodcast.podbean.com where you can listen to all 300... You can access all 330 of our podcasts. There's actually some good ones there. You can also follow us on Instagram. Our handle there is Serious TV Drama as one word. One day someone will teach me how to actually make links that work on Instagram because I apparently don't know how because I'm an idiot. And you can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is at STVD Podcast. It's STVD as in Serious TV Drama. I've actually been a little active with that account, commenting on things, so there might be a reason to follow.
Yeah.
You never know. It's got into something snarky with somebody. Anyway, as far as future podcasts, obviously me and Dan, we have to do... What are we up to now? The second half of season 4 of Breaking Bad? Is that where we the next one we got to do? I think so.
Correct.
Okay. So that'll be sometime this month, I guess. Brian mentioned, and I've mentioned a few times, eventually he and I will get around to finishing our conversation about the rest of Doom Patrol. God knows when, but we'll figure it out.
Soon,
yeah. The Boys isn't coming back till June, but I am looking forward to Jamie. I'm sure that we will tackle that one together, assuming the podcast still exists.
Heck yeah.
I don't know what the deal is with Umbrella Academy. I think they're shooting because they're releasing little teaser ads for it, but I know it's going to be I still think it might not come out till like the end of the year, so who cares? Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're serious about whether or not we might do an Ozark podcast, so we might. We'll see.
Oh, we're definitely serious about it. I know we'd ask Brian.
It's got to happen.
And Brian hates it. He'd rather go hang out in the country club with judges than watch it. But the rest of us might.
I'm picturing Brian in a whole old timey golf outfit now, like Caddyshack or something. Because that's what I think of old timey, the 80s. He's there with Ted Knight. We'll talk about it. I know you broached the idea of doing single episode things. I don't know. I got to think about it. Maybe we'll see. Yep, that's pretty much it as far as I can tell. So I want to thank all of you for the first time we've been together in pretty much a year, or roughly, or close to it.
Yeah.
Again, I think the last time all 4 of us were on a podcast was for number 300. So that was 30 podcasts ago. So there you go. Look at that. I was able to do math really hard. So I will leave it to each one of you. Let's see. What order should we do this? So you'll all step on each other. Well, we'll do ladies first, then Brian, then Dan because he's Dan. I'll let Dan probably have the final word, and then if I'll say something. So you each can say goodbye to everybody now.
All right. Hey. Thanks for having me on. It's been great. It's been too long since I've got to sit down and, chat about all of these things with you guys. I like that our lists, they matched in the right places, I think, and we're individual enough to make it interesting for me anyway. And I look forward to doing this more often.
There you go.
Glad TV's back.
Well, if you invited me on your Survivor podcast, we could have done it more. Anyways.
Oh, shots fired.
Did you listen to our Survivor podcast?
I don't listen to even our podcast. Why would I listen to your fucking podcast?
Oh, you listen to it, you can come on.
Oh, quid pro quo.
Wow. Who would have thought Got would be more accommodating than Jamie? Wow. All right.
Well, I will just say that it's great to hear all your voices to talk about the art that helped us make it through 2021. And I appreciate the listeners that are out there, the ones that like the big, long episodes, that we're known for, and the ones who don't, but hang with us for a little while. But we appreciate it. But I particularly appreciate Scott putting in the work to wrangle all the cats and get it put together and get us here. And it's his love of art. And hopefully 2022 will have some very interesting developments for our friend and for us. And so keep your fingers crossed that 2022 is the end of many bad things and the start of many good things. So good night.
Aww.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything because Scott always hits the stop record button before I say goodnight.
He's right.
He's right. Yeah.
Oh man. And then I think it was might have been the last one me and you did where I ended up going in and editing out like the last 2 minutes because I listened to like, nah, we don't need this. I'm cutting this off.
Nice.
No, you can say something. Go ahead.
No, I don't have anything to say. Fuck you guys. Good night.
Yeah, there you go. That is Danny Boy in a nutshell. I don't really have anything else to say other than so have a good night and a happy new year to everybody out there.